everyone. Welcome to SIFTD's Game of the Year Awards for 2022. I'm Shane Satterfield, and this is Matt Kyle. And we're going to be going through over 20 different categories today and picking winners, and in some cases, losers, for the best and the worst games of 2022. In some cases, the nefarious categories are the most fun to discuss, at least anyway. We have so many clips loaded into the TriCaster today. I'm a little nervous because these shows, hosting and running the TriCaster for shows like this is always a little shifty, always a little tough. So give me a little leeway today if I run a wrong clip here or there, put up a wrong lower third. Hopefully you'll give me a little bit of space to make some mistakes today, because this is a big, big gig just for someone to run a TriCaster on their own, let alone hosting the show while running the TriCaster at the same time. But as I said, there are 23 different categories today that we're going to go through. Generally, we go through each category in 5 minutes or less. Usually, we kind of need to. Otherwise, we're going to be here all flipping day. So it is a little bit like Machine Gun Fire, but I think it keeps things fun and interesting. Before we get going, though, we do have some housekeeping to take care of today. And that is our fantasy league. So, as you guys know, Matt and I play against each other in a video game fantasy league every year. We are the first video game fantasy league in the world. Now it's been co-opted and taken over. There's a whole website for it now, and every other publication does it. But we were the first. We were the first ones to ever do a video game fantasy draft. So Matt and I are going to wrap up the season here on the show. We're also going to share the winner of the SIFTD Fantasy Challenge, which is basically the fantasy league that you guys all participate in every year. And we have a winner for that, and we're going to crown the winner today as well. And as I said, we have 23 awards to get to today, so we don't want to spend too much time messing around here. Let's get straight to the fantasy league stuff. Matt, we're going to start off with our league between you and I will just say it was my worst year ever. In fact, my score is the worst score ever in the history of our league between you and I. I only had 7 games that ended up making it. The lowest we had before was 8. So I only had 7 of the 10 games. Matt, miraculously, you have all 10. All 10 of your games managed to come out this year. Now, as we know, we have 2 alternates in case games get delayed out of the year. Matt only had 2 games that did not come out this year, Baldur's Gate 3 and Redfall, and he had 2 alternates to fill in for those. Matt, I just got to say, you completely crushed it. You knocked it out of the park. Not only did you have all 10 games, which doesn't happen every year for the winner, your percentage, your 82% percentage on average is also one of the highest ever, and your total point score is one of the highest ever. So you had an amazing year in the SIFTD Fantasy League, and for that, you've earned a round of applause. Congratulations, bro. You did awesome. Like, your team was just stacked from top to bottom. Mine was not.
There's just a bunch of safe picks and then 2 risky ones at the end, and then 2 more safe picks as alternates.
Yep.
Honestly, I'm surprised King of Fighters got an 80 plus. I was going for 70 and up on most of that stuff.
I had a rough go. I had Breath of the Wild 2, which didn't come out. I had Starfield, which didn't come out. I had Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, which didn't come out. Forspoken, which didn't come out. Hollow Knight Silksong, which didn't come out. And not only that, Matt, I also have
That is the worst alternate anyone has ever picked.
I have the worst. No, Matt, that is the worst single pick in the history of our fantasy league. Babylon's Fall at 43. Now, keep in mind,
at least it was the last pick.
The funny part is there's one version of Babylon's Fall that's actually 40. But there's another one that's like 46. So the average ended up being 43. But it is the worst pick in the history of the SIFTD Video Game Fantasy League. Babylon's Fall. I had to use it as an alternate because I had so many games that fell out. I mean, half of my original 10 didn't make it. I only had 5 games of my original 10 come out. The worst performance in the history of our league. So I'm not crying too much. I've won the last 2 years in a row. If I won this year, I would have won 3 years in a row, which is unheard of. So I probably should have expected the fall this year, and boy, did I ever fall.
Yeah, I told you before, like, you could have picked Zelda last.
Yeah, because you wouldn't have picked it.
I would never have picked it because I knew that wasn't coming.
I also looked back, and I have picked Breath of the Wild 2 3 years in a row. Yeah. I have been burned by Breath of the Wild 2 3 years in a row.
Who goes first this time?
I don't remember. I think you picked first, or did I pick first? I think you did. this year.
remember.
I can't remember either. But whoever picked first this year, the other person will pick first next year. And it's going to be
Whoever goes first is going to pick Zelda. And finally going to pay off. That's what
Exactly. I'm hoping it's me after I've invested so much capital into Breath of the Wild 2 all these years. I really hope that I get to have it on my team, but I would not be surprised if that turns out to not be the case. So
I can't remember.
This league was actually over months and months ago. Usually we go and do updates throughout the year. We'd kind of mention it here and there, and I'd basically just say, yeah, I'm getting my butt kicked, and I was getting my butt kicked. So here we are at the end of the year where we tally everything up, and Matt just whooped my butt. So congratulations, Matt. Great job. We'll get back at it in January with our next draft. And now it's time.
We'll have another round of people think I'm crazy when I say these things aren't coming out this year, and then they don't.
Yep. Yeah, you did really well this year.
Although I thought Forspoken was going to make it.
Yeah.
I really did.
Yeah, there's a couple of my games that I'm really surprised. Like Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. That game's been in development for 8 years.
Yeah, but I knew that wasn't coming.
It's crazy. It's just nuts.
We're getting Gotham Knights, and that was it.
That was that.
I knew that.
Yep. So now it's time to share who won the Sifted Fantasy Challenge, which is the fantasy football league that you guys all play in. And again, we'll be kicking that off again in early January. You guys will be able to fill it all out again. But here are the results of that. And our winner this year is Get Up Kid 1284. Here's the amazing thing about this, Matt. And I know it may be hard for some of you guys to see it on the stream or whatever, but we have 8 people who got all 10 games like you did. So we put out the word. We're like, look, play really conservative. Try to make sure that you have all 10 games. Because wasn't it last year the only person that had all 10 games won?
It was the one person with all 10.
The sole person. This year we have 8 people. So you guys all did way better this year. Damn Towman, Otaps, Toast 9, Chubb, Anson Chan, Glanny BG. You guys all did a great job. You all had all of your games. In fact, I think there's more than 8. Look how many. There's tons. You guys did way better this year, but ultimately, Get Up Kid 1284 is our winner, and here is his round of applause. Congratulations, Get Up Kid. You're always on our stream. It's great to see when people who really support us win these things. Send me a DM, and we'll get your games out to you. Now, I probably won't be able to get the games out to you until I get back from the holidays. But you can send me a DM.
You picked first this year.
Oh, did I? So you get Zelda.
So I get Zelda.
That's such shit.
After all those years.
Of course. That's just my luck, Matt. That's just how it goes. That's how it is. If it weren't for bad luck, I would have no luck at all. That's pretty much how it is for me. But whatever. We'll see how it goes. I feel like I can still compete without Zelda.
Oh, it's a very stacked year, but it's just there's your guaranteed 90 something.
Yeah, you're guaranteed your first pick to get a gigantic score now. So anyway, congratulations to Get Up Kid 1284. He scored 1,354 points. The next closest person was 1,333 points. So he actually won by a pretty wide margin. Great job, man. Excellent work there. So again, get at me on Twitter at Dinfire. You can send me a DM. You can send me a direct message on Sifted. I'm at Shane there. Tell me 2 games that you want. You are a patron, so patrons win 2 games for winning the Sifted Fantasy Challenge. If you're not a patron, you only win 1 game, but you are, and so Get Up Kid, you win 2 games of your choice. So send me your picks for 2 games, and again, I won't be able to get those to you until we get back from the new year after I get back from my trip to Pennsylvania in January. But you can send those 2 games whenever you want, and we'll get them out to you as soon as we can. So congratulations once again. Excellent job. Thanks to everyone for playing. We had a ton of people playing this year. I think it was the most that we've ever had. And we'll push it again in early January. And I wish all you guys luck in the 2023 Sifted Fantasy Challenge. Okay, with that, I think we're ready to start the awards. We got through that pretty quickly, luckily, because we have a lot of stuff to get to. So here we go. Sifted's Game of the Year Awards for 2022. We're going to kick things off with Matt's favorite genre. Best first-person shooter. And Matt, you did manage to find a winner for you this year. What was it?
The only one I played, pretty much. Tiny Tina's Wonderlands.
Yep. I also enjoyed this a great deal. I am a big shooter player, and my pick is different than yours, but I think this is a good pick, particularly for somebody like you who likes a certain kind of game.
Yeah, this this is actually a lot better than I thought it was going to be. Like, I really had been feeling burnt out on the Borderlands formula.
It's better than Borderlands 3.
It's way better than Borderlands 3. It's,
yeah.
Like, I know that they basically kind of the plan is to kind of make this the franchise going forward, and I agree with that. I know Tiny Tina isn't everybody's favorite thing, but like, I thought for the most part the whole thing worked. It was pretty funny in a way that Borderlands 3 just
the writing was really good. Yeah.
And I played it a lot longer. A lot of the like the metric on some of that is like, did I play it longer than I had to? Like, you know,
for you, that's
like
your metric.
Like once we do the episode about it, did I go play it again? And like, yeah, I did. So
that's good. That's a good barometer.
I didn't finish it because it is, like all Borderlands games, way too long.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I played a big chunk of it too. I probably played almost 20 hours of this game.
Yeah, it was around there.
It definitely scratches that loot itch, like any Borderlands game does. But the plot and everything else in this was better than Borderlands 3, which is weird, but you're right. I think they're taking the right approach in continuing this franchise on. It seems to have done pretty well sales-wise as well. Maybe even better than Borderlands 3, which is kind of crazy to think about.
Yeah,
so,
I imagine Borderlands has sold more units just because it's gotten so cheap. But it feels like maybe launch sales might have been stronger.
Yeah, that's a good pick. My pick for the best first-person shooter of 2022 is Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. I have been playing the crap out of this game ever since I got it. Finished the campaign. Best campaign in Call of Duty in a long time. Now, it was a little derivative and kind of similar to other campaigns, or at least a lot of the missions were. There were a lot of homage missions in the campaign, but I still really enjoyed it. I thought it was great. Some of the good missions in the campaign were some of the best I've played in like 10 years in the franchise. But it's not just that. It's the entire package. It's just gigantic. Like, I even kind of got into Warzone for a little while and kept playing that. I didn't like the DMZ stuff, but the Battle Royale stuff I did end up going back to, but I still just keep going back to the competitive multiplayer.
I know a couple people who bought this because they didn't realize that Warzone was free.
Oh, no. They thought they were getting Warzone. That sucks. It's the whole package, though. It doesn't have zombies this year, but I'm so burnt out on zombies, like, I don't really care.
I didn't even think of that until you said it.
Yeah. All the stuff that I really care about in Call of Duty is in this game, and it's in spades. The other thing I like, too, is how frequently Activision is cycling in new experimental modes into the playlist. It seems like every time that I boot it up, there's like 2 brand new modes that I can try that I hadn't played before. And a lot of times they go way out of the comfort zone for Call of Duty. So just a really good entry for Call of Duty this year. And I will say, too, that it was kind of a weak year for first-person shooters. There wasn't a lot of really good competition, which is odd because first-person shooters are one of the most popular genres in our industry. I do feel like they're starting to slow down a little bit, though.
Yeah, I've seen a bunch of like articles about that recently where it's like, yeah, first-person shooters are not actually very prominent anymore.
Yeah, because I think a big part of it, too, is that people play them for so long.
Yeah.
It's like, I won't play another shooter for a while. I'll keep playing Call of Duty.
I also think part of it is that there's only so much you can do with it, and there's everything you can do has been done with it.
Yeah.
It doesn't lend itself to a particular kind of game that is popular now. You are not limited. One of the reasons for using first person back in the day was it meant you didn't have to render the character. You know, like you could just show. That's all you had to do.
It made a big difference.
And now you can. Like, there's no reason not to show the character. There's no reason not to show more of the world and what your guy looks like. So there is an element of that now where it's like, why would you limit yourself to first-person shooter when you could make anything else now and just include shooting in it?
Yeah.
It's a...
Because a lot of action games now include shooting, and a lot of times you can even go into first person in a third-person game for the shooting part of the game. So
I think it's kind of one of the there's cycles of things. There was a period where RPGs were not a big deal for a while because nobody wanted to spend the time and money to make something that big that was seen as a niche interest. Yeah, and that's shifted. So I think the first-person shooter will return to power at some point. There's a cycle to that. Yeah. But right now, I think it is in kind of a lull. Yeah. And you're only really, you got to obviously make the big ones. You got to make Battlefield and Call of Duty and whatever. But I don't think it's as attractive right now, especially with, things like game as a service stuff. Like, how do you even break into that realm when Destiny has that chokehold on it in the West. And
well, I mean, you look at it though; it's
that
like
one
what
that bombed here has the chokehold in the East, and it's just like,
well, this is why
Crossfire or whatever.
Sony is freaking out about Call of Duty. Because it can't make a shooter that people care about on its own, and nobody can.
Yeah, even back in the day, they couldn't. You know, Killzone, I mean, you
passable,
like or dislike Killzone however you like, but like it was not what they wanted it to be in terms of, you know,
resistance,
cultural resonance.
Okay, but not great. So,
although I would love to see Resistance saved from the PS3. I would love to see a Resistance collection at some point.
That makes sense. But yeah, the genre has definitely fallen in relevance over the last couple years, really. And that coupled with the fact that this Call of Duty is a really strong entry, and it became an easy pick for me.
I think it's kind of in a space where like platformers were a while ago, where like you had, you know, a Nintendo kind of keeping it alive because that's what they do and what they do well, but nobody else was really doing it.
Yep.
And I think you're kind of a similar situation with the top first-person shooter makers, and
because
that's it.
Call of Duty is also so dominant; it's such a huge deterrent.
Well, it's just like nobody in the world wanted to make a character platformer for a while, but it's not like anyone stopped buying or making Mario games. Yeah. Like, the juggernaut remains the juggernaut.
People still want to play good ones, is what it comes down to. Yep. Okay. That's best first-person shooter. Next up, kind of a tangential category that relates to the one prior, and that is best multiplayer game. Matt, what's your pick for that?
The only one I played for any length of time, which is Multiverses.
Yeah. One of the surprise hits of 2022, a free-to-play Smash Brothers clone starring, well, it's really even hard to pigeonhole exactly who all the characters
things
are.
Warner Brothers owns, basically.
Yeah. Warner
Brothers IP stable. It's a weird mix of things that kind of mostly works in a way that probably it doesn't mesh the way Smash Brothers does, but like it works. It's there. It's an interesting change from what Smash Brothers works. The co-op element actually, I mean, maybe not anymore. I haven't played it in a long time, but at the time of launch, like people were actually more or less trying to work together, even if you teamed up with randos.
I mean, that's the big difference, right? Is it is 2v2.
Yeah. And I mean, very focused,
you can play
on 2v2
by yourself, but the game is designed for 2v2 play.
Yeah, and you know, and they're more or less supporting it okay. The online play is pretty good. Like for the, you know, even at the launch time, it was smooth for launch. Apparently, it has not persisted particularly well, but I don't know. Big variety in how the different characters play. Very clear difficulty kind of skill curve on who you want to use. There's, you know, basic characters and advanced characters, and they do call that out pretty accurately in the character select screen. Yep. It does kind of suck where you're just like, oh, I really want to play Batman. Like Batman's pretty moderate difficult. You know, you might want to start with whoever. Wonder Woman, or I think Wonder Woman's the recommended starter.
Yeah, I didn't have too many troubles like learning any of the characters in this. And again, there's muscle memory there from Smash that carries over into this game.
To play them very effectively, you need to really dig into them.
Oh, sure,
you know,
sure.
Especially like the higher, like Bugs Bunny is a completely different skill set from the rest of the game. Like,
oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, because they list him as like a wizard, as a mage or something, but he's so much about summoning stuff and messing with it's a whole different thing from the pretty straightforward like Superman, Wonder Woman, punch stuff.
Yeah.
Which is cool. I mean, if you have the patience for that.
This game is huge. It has a huge player base. Now, it is free to play, but I think that was a smart move.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to have worked for them. I like a lot of the additions. It's cool they put the Gremlins in. I didn't expect that as one of their early additions.
Yeah.
And they react to player feedback pretty well, like changing Velma's calling the cops on you to having the mystery machine show up. I think is a
that was a good call. Yeah,
like we don't need Velma to be a snitch. Yeah, I think you know, as you know, it's very rare to see a Smash Brothers clone competitor like actually more or less make the grade and keep it going.
There's been a lot, and they've all failed except for this one.
I mean, they're doing better than the Batgirl movie. That's for sure.
That's true.
So we'll see how long Warner Brothers allows this to live.
Yeah.
But as someone who doesn't play a lot of multiplayer, this one kept me going for longer than I expected.
Also, I should add that best fighting game not included in this year's awards because that was literally the only one. Maybe we should have had it just to give it an award.
I mean, there were a bunch of them, but they were all like small time anime things.
Yeah.
There was a bunch of updates to various. There was like I think a new Under Night Fate Stay in Birth, whatever. There's that kind of stuff.
Yep.
And honestly, while I do enjoy a lot of those, none of them stand out enough to really be like, oh, this should get an award. It's like it's yeah, you can consider, I guess, just give it to Sifu, I guess. Why not? As long as we're making shit up.
Yeah, so no fighting and no VR in this year's awards as well, because one, it was a horrible year for VR games, and two, Matt and I do not play VR.
I didn't play any VR this year.
It's just not fair for us to be crowning winners
next
of
year,
anything.
probably, because of PlayStation VR 2. But
Yeah, not this year. Yep. And my pick for best multiplayer game, surprise, surprise, is Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. I probably should have split these categories apart, or maybe it does make sense for them to be together. I don't know.
Get it out of the way.
Yeah. As I said in the prior category for best first-person shooter, the multiplayer suite in this is just incredible. It's always evolving. It's always changing. No matter what you like to do as far as shooting a gun in a video game, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 gives you ample opportunity to do it. There's even like third-person modes. They really start mixing it up with some of the different playlists that they're providing, and also how it's all organized, being able to create your own playlists and just add all these different disparate modes into this one menu so you can always just search for exactly what you want. They've just honed the multiplayer suite to a fine sheen at this point. And again, this is a really good entry for Call of Duty. I really like the maps in the game. Some of the big team battle maps are straight up like Battlefield at this point with vehicles and everything. Like, I really am struggling to see where the place for Battlefield is now, Matt. And that's a big move for Call of Duty for it to do that. So, best multiplayer game for me, Call of Duty. I've been playing it since it came out. I just played it last night for a couple hours. I will probably go home tonight and play it for a couple hours. It has turned into my daily driver game, the game that I play when I'm waiting for my wife to get ready so we can go out to eat or whatever. So, really good this year. Great entry across the board, and especially in its multiplayer suite. Okay, next up, a genre that sometimes isn't in our Game of the Year awards, but this year it absolutely is, and that is Best Adventure Game. Best Adventure Game, when we talk about adventure in our awards, generally it's point-and-click games like, Return to Monkey Island, stuff like that, or it can be walking simulators, or it can just be narrative-driven games. The genre has expanded over the last 15 years. It literally just used to be point and click, and now there's several other spin-offs.
It used to be non-existent.
Yeah, it has disappeared for a while.
Telltale's Walking Dead revived this whole thing back
in
a way that I honestly never thought, because that was one of my favorite things back in the 90s.
Yeah,
all that, and I thought that was just thought it was just dead. That was a kind of game that went on its way, and then it's all back, and now
it's back and stronger than ever. Yeah. I had problems picking my winner for this category.
This is one of the more packed categories this year
than typical. Yep. And Matt, what is your pick for best adventure game of 22?
I went with Norco.
I don't think too many people are going to argue with you about this.
Which is still, even this came out pretty earlier in the year, I think.
Yeah.
But this one stuck with me.
Also, our buddy Garnet Lee is the person who signed this game to Raw Fury.
Oh yeah,
yeah,
all right.
Well, he's working. He now lives in Europe, and he works for Raw Fury.
He went to Sweden,
and his job is to go out and find games for them to sign to publish.
He found a good one.
He did, definitely.
This is a
some of the best pixel art I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's very, very, very moody and evocative.
Yep.
Visually, you're trying to find out the story of what happened to your mother who died recently, your estranged mother, and you come back to figure out what's going on in this kind of it's a cyberpunk dystopia, but it's also like so there's guys with glowing eyes and cyborgs chasing you and things like that, and weird things obviously androids. You have an android friend and stuff, but it's also people live in normal houses and have to walk it's that interesting. I like
it's like a real look at the future.
Yeah, I like it when these things remember that even if everyone's got cyborg arms, there's still going to be couches.
Yeah.
It's not going to look that alien from a ground level.
Right. Well, it's like everybody thought the future was, the Jetsons, flying cars and all that. That's not how it's worked out.
Yeah. So it's a cyberpunk Southern Gothic mystery story, and it's very unlike anything else in the genre, I would say. Even the way it presents itself, with this kind of you don't see people do,
pixel art like that.
It's amazing. Pixel art stuff doesn't get dissolves like that.
Yeah.
Or whatever that. It's
like an alpha channel.
Yeah. It's very well written. There's a lot of gameplay variety. There's a lot of things that do weird mini games, and you have to drive a boat around, and you have to figure. Yeah, it's not just clicking through dialogue choices. And it's set in a very unusual place. It's set in it's called Norco, which is a real place in Louisiana, which is named after an oil company, like it's named after the refinement factory or whatever in the town, because that's the only place anybody worked. You're from Pennsylvania, you know how that works, coal mining and all that.
There's one business in the town, and that's where everybody works. And if that goes out of business,
anything happens to it,
it's over.
That's the end of the town. That's basically what's happened here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's really good. I think it just hit consoles like last month, and it may even be on Game Pass.
Is it?
I can't remember.
This is one game that I regret not playing.
Yeah,
I was trying to find time for it this week, and I just never managed to get it together.
For sure. Also, the one game I didn't get to that I wanted to was Immortality.
Yeah, that's another one. Yep.
So that might have been a contender here. I don't know.
That's the sequel to Her Story, right?
Yeah, it's the same.
Where you use video clips to piece together
same developer.
A murder mystery.
It's like 3 different versions of it's Rashomon, basically.
Yeah.
From what I understand, and it's like 3 movies. It's interesting, but I just didn't get to it. So that might have been a contender there. But I guess people should know that I did not have. So that wasn't in consideration here because Immortality I didn't get to play.
Yeah, me either.
Vincent says Norco is on Game Pass.
Okay, great.
So go do that.
Yep. I'll probably play it here in the next couple of days before I leave to go to Pennsylvania. My pick for Best Adventure Game, and this was really hard for me. In fact, you're going to hear another game in this genre that really resonated with me later on in another category. But for me, overall, the Best Adventure Game was The Quarry. This is the next choose-your-own horror adventure game from Supermassive, the team behind Until Dawn, and a bunch of other really great choose-your-own horror adventure games. This game, I know the premise seems rote, especially if you're into like slasher horror movies or whatever. A bunch of teens go to this camp and blah, blah, blah. This is actually in reverse. They're all trying to leave the camp, and something happens that they can't leave the camp. So they end up stranded there. But you still might think, oh, that sounds like Friday the 13th. And on some level it does. But it's really the execution of how Supermassive does it. It's not really a murder mystery, although you are kind of wondering who the murderer is. And it ends, throughout the course of the game, you suspect it could be 5 different people before you ultimately get to the end. Also, the choices in this game, extremely meaningful. There is a huge cascading effect on the decisions that you make in this game. And the other thing I would say, too, is that some of the choices in this game seem very subtle, and you don't think that they're going to have a big bearing on what may happen later, and they end up having a gigantic impact on how the overall story is told. The voice acting in this, the tech behind this game, the visuals in this game are amazing, literally at times almost photorealistic, which is something that adventure games, I believe, should be able to accomplish in most instances. Now, with Norco, it was a stylistic choice to use pixel art. But if you're going to use 3D visuals, adventure games, you should be able to make the game look damn good, and this game does look damn good. So I was impressed with it on pretty much every front. The other thing, too, is the Supermassive's games haven't had a lot of interaction beyond sort of choosing your dialogue tree options. In this, there's actual gameplay that you actually play through, and you move around, and it's closer to an action-adventure than any of their games have been in the past. So just across the board, I found this to be a great adventure game. You probably will be able to find this game on the cheap right now with holiday sales going on. I highly recommend it if you do. I had a blast playing it. Also not a huge commitment, 10 hours or so. You can get through the game. And I feel like it was a very rewarding experience. And I felt like I was rewarded for the choices that I made, which for me in the adventure genre is really important in 2022. So there you go. My pick.
Lighting on that is so weird still to me.
The lighting on
that in that game,
yeah,
where you're looking at that, like where it's all dark, and you can't see anybody's face, and it's like
very dramatic.
It's like a David Fincher movie. I'm like, that's not what light looks like outside. Like I've never been outside in the evening, afternoon thing and been like, I can't see half of my friend's face. Because
she was under there's a tree there, right? So they're in the shade under a tree.
Right, but that's not how the human eye works.
Yeah.
Like it's
you
very
adjust
weird
your eye
choice.
adjusts and you can see it better.
Yeah,
but I'll say this too, Matt. Like
that's what ray tracing's for.
It is,
so you can do that differential in shade.
I'll say this though, Matt, one thing I do not like about games, and this is one of those cases where realism goes too far, I don't like in games where you're inside and then you come outside and there's that like 3-second transition where it like blows out and then like your eye, like I understand that's realistic. I hate it in video games.
There was a racing game I played that did that.
Screw
recently.
that, dude.
And
like going through a tunnel,
and
you have 3 seconds where you're blind.
I was like, no, that's not how.
No, screw that.
I drive a lot. It's never happened to me. I'm sorry. Like,
Yep.
Like, it's a cool effect, but, like, it's a cool effect in a dramatic narrative sense, not in a I have to not run into a cow sense, you know?
I just think it's great to see the adventure genre, like, resurging. It really was, like, honest. You're right. The Walking Dead rejuvenated it. Yeah. Oddly enough, a game about zombies reanimated the genre. But then after that, I did feel like it kind of fell into a lull. This year, though, really a great year for narrative-driven games across the board.
Well, I think you're finally starting to see, like, the AAA space sort of embrace that outside of David Cage and, you know.
Yep.
But there was a lot of options.
They're getting budgets now for these games, which is great. Makes a big difference. Okay, next up, a category that really defies description at this point. And I'm just going to say, Matt, like, whatever you want to define as an RPG for you, I'm totally fine with, and I hope that you can extend the same courtesy to me, because the lines are really so blurry whether a game is an action-adventure or an action RPG anymore. At this point, if somebody decides that they feel like one is an RPG and one isn't, I'm totally cool with it.
Everything in my head for RPG was listed by IGN as action-adventure, so who knows anymore?
Yeah, it's really hard. It's really open to interpretation.
Yeah, some people don't believe it's an RPG unless you're doing turn-based fighting from a menu, and some people think if there's numbers on the life bar, it's an RPG. Like,
some people believe if you don't create your own character, it's not an RPG.
Which means Final Fantasy VII is not an RPG.
Right. I mean, if you can go back to,
now you're in a weird area again. Like,
we talked about this on last week, or this most recent episode of GameFace. Actually, this week's GameFace. So we're not going to browbeat it this time, but I just wanted to say I gave Matt leeway to do whatever he wants with this category, and I think he's extending that to me as well. So, Matt, what is the best RPG in your opinion of 2022?
Call of Duty Modern Warfare.
That would be stretching it.
There's experience points. No, it's Elden Ring.
Yeah. I don't think anyone's too surprised about this from you.
No, this is clearly an action RPG.
Yep.
At least I think so.
Yes. It is. It's definitely an action RPG.
This is this was a pretty good RPG year. There was a new Xenoblade. There was a lot of there was a God of War. It's been a good year. I mean, look,
it's the most popular genre in the industry, and it's also the one that the publishers are pumping the most money into development for. So it's another strong year.
Next year we're going to see it again with Starfield and all.
Yep.
There's even a world where you can consider Gotham Knights an RPG.
Yeah.
But no, this one kept me playing. Yeah, I played 200 hours of Elden Ring.
Is that what your final total was ultimately?
About that, yeah. It's a lot.
I played it for like 20. I mean, that's amazing for me.
That's a ton.
That's like a record for me.
And while I certainly have gone on the record saying, like, I don't think it's particular. Everyone's like, oh my god, it's done open world in a way no, it does open world exactly the way everybody else did. It just did it with Dark Souls, and that's cool.
The enemies are just hard, instead of easy pushovers. It's a rewarding character building journey. I think it is friendlier to different builds, even more so than the other From games have been. You can play from one of the Soulsborne games with almost any build you want, but I think it's much less likely you're going to just sort of, if you don't know what you're doing, sort of put together, unless you're Elon Musk, apparently, because that build sucked. Odds are you're going to put together something that's going to work for you. It's a little less it's a little less opaque, except for that one. What was it? I think luck it was one stat that doesn't really do a lot. The proof's in the pudding for me, because people were able to come on the stream and help me tweak my build, and I could watch it. I could see the difference in what they were telling me to do. Yes, you feel it, absolutely. And in that way, to me, like, that's role playing. Like, being able to switch up your stats and have a meaningful difference in how the game plays, that to me is an RPG. So I agree with you. I think it was a great RPG, and it makes perfect sense in the category, and a solid game across the board. So good pick. My pick for best RPG of 2022, and this may ruffle some feathers, but I don't care. It's God of War Ragnarok. Pretty much at the end of the game at this point. The RPG elements in this are insane, because you get so many of these extra characters that you play as throughout the game, and they all have their own huge skill trees and their own armor and their own weapons and stuff that you have to find and collect and upgrade with your points that you earn. So to me, the RPG elements in this are great. The story elements in this are really strong. You're going to have to wait to see what we pick for some of the other parts of RPGs, like best story and stuff like that, later on in our Game of the Year awards. But I thought the story in this is great. it didn't hit me in the feels like the first one did, because you got to remember, I was just coming off the death of my father when the last one came out. And so it really hit me hard, because the last game was really all about Kratos.
Yeah,
and
this is more about
everything else.
More about regret.
A lot
of regret and getting old and slowly dying. Basically. But
which I can relate to at this point in my life.
But it's just it's as with that experience, it's this is a more drawn out sort of gradual thing where the first game was a shorter, more focused experience that was more likely to just punch you in the gut when it had to.
Yep.
And this has its share of those, but
it does.
It's not the it's the big sprawling Return of the King kind of thing after a more focused story.
Agreed.
Certainly the first game told you that story to tell you this one. But
and the bigger game is fleshed out mostly with RPG elements that are elements that are typically assigned.
I do think
to
it's
the
funny
RPG
that almost every side quest in the game is fixing some horrible mistake one of your friends made.
It's true.
A
lot of them are revisiting places from the last game where bad stuff happened.
Yeah, as long as we're here, brother, can we go do this? Take care of this thing that I probably shouldn't tell anyone about ever, but we're gonna do it anyway. It's
So anyway, and look, I totally get it. Some people may think that God of War Ragnarok strays a little close to the action adventure side. I totally understand that. I'm not arguing against it. But for me, it was the best action RPG of 2022, and therefore, for me, the best RPG as well. Next up, best indie game. This is one of those categories where I never, when we're done, I'm like, we probably effed that up, because I just don't play enough indie games. That's just the truth of it. I'm not trying to hide it. I only have so much time in my life, in each day, each week, each month, each year, and I just can't play all the great indie games. There's just too many of them. So this is one of those categories where it's hard to say this is the definitive best whatever. I think this, for us, this is what we played that really resonated with us. And for us this year, both of us agreed on the same game, and the winner for best indie game of 2022 is Stray. Play as a cat. That's you had me at play as a cat.
Pretty much.
But it's not just that. It's how you play as a cat and how they found all the if you're a cat lover, this game will hit you in the feels over and over and over again. You could tell people who love cats made this game, because they've managed to capture those moments that you have with your cat throughout your cat's life that are these seminal times where the cat makes you feel better about yourself or gives you new perspective. I don't know. I haven't had a cat for a long time because it died, and I was so devastated I don't want to go through it again. So I have a lot of personal attachments to felines. I love cats, and they tend to love me as well. I don't know why that is. But if you're a cat lover or a cat owner...
My other cat is afraid of everybody in the world, and she will come out... She doesn't come out of the bedroom because she's afraid of Luna. But Shane's the only person who comes over that she doesn't hide in the bedroom. If I go in there right now, she'll just be out sitting around.
I don't know why that is. Cats love me for some reason. They can tell that I love them, I guess. I don't know.
It took her a year, but she came down and let you pet her at one time.
Yeah. I had never seen a cat.
No, yeah.
Really a recluse. But also, I thought the game is just Stray is just really creative in how it lets you play as the cat and how it set up puzzles for the cat, and also just the little extra stuff in the game that let a cat be a cat, being able to scratch the walls or knead in the carpet or play with a ball of yarn. They just nailed it. If you're gonna play a game about being a cat, it's hard to imagine a better example of that than Stray. Matt, do you think there'll ever be a sequel to Stray?
I don't know. I mean, it's certainly going to be tempting.
Because the ending felt like it didn't really leave.
No, but I mean, you could always just do it again.
Yeah.
But there's probably
I'd be cool with.
Yeah, there's probably more to explore in that world, but they'll have to make that decision on their own.
Yeah.
I'll tell you one thing. You could just do another thing involving cat. It'd be a shame to waste the cat tech.
That's true.
That's true. Whatever they do next should probably
Unreal Engine 5 cat
animals,
tech.
Because they're very good at that. Cats are hard. Cats are harder to animate properly than dogs.
And the animation in Stray is amazing. Yeah, they really nailed it. So, look, again, this is one of those categories where I'm sure there might be people in chat right now saying we're crazy, and there are people who are really into indie games. They're saying we're crazy or whatever. I understand that perspective. This is just based upon what we managed to play this year, and admittedly, at least admitting for myself, I do not get to play as many indie games as I would like. So, still, I don't think there's any shame in giving Stray an award. It's still a great game. So, big fan. Both of us are big fans. Next up, Best action adventure, and this is a category we were just talking about where, you know, some of these games can stray over into the action RPG territory and vice versa. But this year, there was plenty of great action adventure games that are obviously action adventures, where there's no RPG elements in them at all.
Like, I guess I could have, I didn't really think about it. I guess I could have put God of War here.
Yeah.
But, like...
And I would have been okay with that. If you'd done that, I'd been like, I'm totally fine with it. But
yeah, I don't know. I guess it depends what part of it is more defining for you. Mm-hmm. If, like, the fighting is more defining, or the walking around doing, you know, story-driven character
RPG
development stuff.
Yeah.
And I think I lean more to the... At least in Ragnarok, I lean more to the character... I mean, I'm playing Ragnarok to find out what happens. Mm-hmm. Every time the fights start...
Story's great.
When the fights start, I'm just like, ugh.
I'm like that with the puzzles.
Yeah.
At the end of the game, I was like, I'm good. I don't need to, like, do any more of these puzzles.
Yep.
I don't need to, like, walk around this environment looking for this one angle that lets me look into a building so I can, like, throw my axe through that little crack in the window and then hit something inside the building. Like, I'm just done.
There's a couple points where I was just like, Kratos, just step over the fence.
Yeah.
Just step over the fucking fence.
I hear you.
I promise you can climb that. I promise you can get up there.
But that goes back to what I've been saying about the last two God of Wars, that they feel in some ways like old games. They don't feel like games that are made in 2022 or whatever. But that's also a little bit of their charm, I think. But anyway, with all that in mind, what was your pick for the best action adventure of 2022?
I went with Sifu.
Yeah.
Because I think once you remove games with RPG elements from this category, you're not left with
There's not a whole lot. Well, actually, this year there were some good ones, but...
A couple. There wasn't much that I played more than this. And I admit I didn't finish this one because...
it's hard as balls.
It's really hard. And I just never had the time to, like, focus on mastering the combat system.
Matt, I played this game for an hour. I was like, I get it.
Yeah, but I got through, like, the fourth level, the fourth mission or whatever.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't think I ever got past the third stage without, like, being, like, at least 50 years old. Because you go up in age every time you die.
Every time you die, you get older.
I have watched...
Which makes it harder.
I have watched YouTube playthroughs. Well, you get advantages at one point. It's a shift. But eventually,
it gets harder.
It does get harder. But you get more powerful in terms of damage. But, I've watched, like, playthroughs of, like, no-hit, max difficulty, one run thing, which I will never be.
Which is just mind-boggling.
One of the things that you don't realize until you play a while is, like, the secret is to be more aggressive.
Yeah.
Like,
I've heard that from a couple people.
You can knock these people down and they never, like, have a chance if you know what you're doing. I do not fully know what I'm doing. But as you see here, like, it's also like a game you can kind of improvise in, and because it's got that roguelike element, there is an aspect of, like, I'm going to try this time. Yeah. And, like, if you do die...
And you probably will.
But, like, the mission, the missions are, like, if you do them, like, all, fairly well, like, they're, like, 5 minutes long. It's not like you're, like, going back to, like, slog through a whole thing again.
Right. Yeah.
And it has that sort of, roguelike, one more try element to it. Uh-huh. And then you do get to keep a lot of stuff permanently as you upgrade things, and so even
a little bit like Returnal.
Even like, I mean, a lot of them have that now, but like there's that element of, like, if you get to even if I completely biffed it in mission 2, at least I gained enough experience to upgrade this one skill permanently, and that's going to help me going forward. And in the case of Sifu, it feels very tangible because it's a new move or it's a new ability or a new way that you can fight, and it's kind of pure in that regard. Yeah. So
it's a polarizing game. People either love it or hate it. Some people in chat are saying it's their game of the year. El Guapo 3385. It's one of my games of the year. Yeah.
It's very good, and it does have an easy mode now.
Yeah. So, probably a smart move.
I don't actually know what that easy mode is.
Yeah, I wonder how they change it.
I think you probably just age slower.
Maybe. That could be.
Or maybe have more life.
There's a lot of things they could do to make it easier.
Yeah, it's very modular.
Yep. Great game that just didn't resonate with me, but I totally understand how it could be someone else's best action adventure of 2022. My pick, you guys probably figured this out, Bayonetta 3. I was really impressed with this game. I was actually surprised how low its Metacritic was. It ended up at like an 86 or something like that.
That feels high to me.
Oh, really? 86 feels high to you?
I didn't like this game at all.
Yeah, I remember that. I'm still shocked that you didn't like this game. Actually, I'll be honest with you, Matt. I am shocked how you've kind of turned heel on Platinum in general.
I have not been impressed by a Platinum game in a very
long time. Yeah. I was impressed with this one. I think this game is great.
I think I am technically impressed by it. I think, it doesn't actually run that well on the Switch, like, overall, but, like...
It runs better than it does. So, somehow the other night, I stumbled upon... I don't even know if it was Digital Foundry, but somebody did an analysis of this. Oh, it was Modern Vintage Gamer. And what he did was, he overclocked his Switch to see what kind of frame rates he could get out of this game. Which is crazy that you can overclock your Switch, but he did. And actually, Matt, the base game runs like solid over 50, but it fluctuates between 50 and 60. And then he overclocked his Switch and got it to peg at 60.
Yeah, but the other Bayonettas have pegged at 60.
They have
on default hardware.
You're right. But it is crazy. Like I think a lot of people feel like you did. Oh, the game doesn't run that well. It actually runs really well. But I would argue that they may have been smarter to peg it at 30 and just leave it pegged at 30.
They would have been demolished by the fans.
Well, I think people would have got angry, but I think it would have kept people from saying the frame rate's all over the place.
I can't even imagine playing a Bayonetta at 30 frames a second.
Yeah,
like that.
I don't know.
You wouldn't have my opinion on this game because I would not have paid money for that. Period.
Well, okay, then I guess for you, they made the right decision to have a fluctuating frame rate from 50 to 60.
I mean, that's preferable to 30. It's playable. It's more.
I was shocked though by his analysis that it's literally always over 50 frames a second, and then it dips up and down from 60. Mm-hmm. And then with overclock, it was
the trouble is that Platinum's gameplay style that is so heavily timing and dodge based requires a reliable frame rate.
Yeah, that's true.
30 isn't.
But that's
really
why I said pegged at 30.
The 30 is not
reliable.
fast enough for that. It's not reliable for what they're trying to do, and they'd have to change how the combat works because there are things that are one frame.
You're right.
Game.
Yeah, that's a good point.
That's it. And hovering in the 50s sometimes is not the ideal solution, but it's better than hampering the entire way the game's built.
My overall point, though, is that it seems to have gotten slagged for having dodgy frame rates, when in actuality, it does run pretty freaking fast.
I mean, it's impressive that they can do that on the Switch, but
because this is I would argue, the best-looking Switch game ever, maybe.
Yeah. Original game. I mean, there's stuff that I don't know if The Witcher 3 looks any good on the Switch. I haven't seen it.
Talk about frame rate problems. There's your frame rate.
There's no lack of ambition here, but it's just like that. Plus it feels like such a retread of things in a lot of ways of the previous game in terms of structure and just.
I would agree with that, but it also had been so long since I had played Bayonetta 2, and I didn't play a ton of Bayonetta 2 either.
I didn't love Bayonetta 2 either.
Me either. I like this better than Bayonetta 2 a lot more. I enjoyed it a lot more.
I think fighting God is more compelling than fighting blobby weird things. This is nothing.
Enemies were repetitive for sure.
Nothing appeals to me in this game, and even like the kaiju stuff, which should appeal to me, I think it plays like shit. So I just don't care. I was left ice cold by this game, which I was a little surprised. But I thought I would at least like it.
I was actually surprised how much I liked it.
Yeah,
I didn't think I was gonna like it as much as I did because I had played Bayonetta 2 and I literally had played it for like 10 hours and just like fell off. This one plowed through it, played the whole game, really enjoyed it. Story not great.
Yeah,
that's for sure. That's its weakest link, in my opinion.
This is the opposite of the litmus test of did I play it after the episode was over, because shortly after you left, I think I went to the Switch and uninstalled it and turned the Switch on. I was like, I just want you gone. I want you out of my house.
Okay, fair enough. Next category.
Not my worst game of the year, though, surprisingly.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
Not even close.
Yeah, we'll get to that. Next category, I'm only going to tackle this because Matt doesn't really play sports games.
Yeah, I didn't play a sports game this year.
And this category wasn't in the awards last year. And the only reason I put it in this year is because there was one game that I played that I really liked that didn't really fit anywhere else, and I wanted to recognize it, and it actually does fit into the sports category. So you may be thinking, oh, Shane's going to give Madden an award. Nope, it's not Madden, it's not FIFA, it's not NBA 2K.
You didn't watch the Madden episode.
Yeah, it is Rollerdrome, which is a roller derby game, which I think is a sport. I guess if you count professional wrestling as a sport, then it would be a sport.
Close enough.
It's a sport-ish.
You could also call this a platformer, I guess.
You could, yeah. Rollerdrome is a roller derby game where you roll around arenas and shoot people. And it's like a little bit, it's like Tony Hawk's Pro Skater mixed with like a third-person shooter. There's really no other game like it.
Mobius.
Yeah, there's no other game like it ever. And not only and I don't like this game just because there's no other game like it ever. It also is very well executed and very fun. And I would also say, after you get past the first couple stages, really challenging. And that's when you start to understand how well the game was built and designed, how great the controls are, how important all the different traversal elements are inside the game, and you end up using them all. There's a bullet time element to the game as well. You have to learn how to use slow motion and to dodge missiles.
I had someone dismiss this because they're like, oh, it's just Jet Set Radio. And I'm like, I don't know what Jet Set Radio you played.
It's not like
but it wasn't this. I don't remember dual pistols in Jet Set Radio.
Yeah. This is one of the most unique games I played this year. Also one of my favorite indie games of the year. There's simply no other game like it. There never has been, and maybe there will be a sequel to this in the future. I don't know. It doesn't seem like it caught on all that well. But it caught on with me. I really enjoyed this game.
Yeah, I haven't seen this pop up in any lists this year.
There's all kinds of mystery behind it, too, with the story. It's like, why are they there? Why does this weird roller derby league exist? And the way they tell the story is not overt, and it's a little cryptic, but it is interesting. So I really enjoyed this game. I don't know if it's been discounted already, if you can find it for cheap. But if you do find it for like 10 or 20 bucks, at some point in 2023, I highly recommend picking it up if you're a fan of third-person shooters and if you're a fan of really unique games, which, if you're an indie game fan, I can pretty much guarantee that is the case. So Rollerdrome, SIFTD's Sports Game of the Year for 2022. Next up, a category that Matt does participate in, Best Platformer. And this, Matt, is a genre that also comes and goes in our awards. Like, one year there aren't any. One year it seems like we get overloaded with them. And most of that usually depends on what Nintendo has in its release calendar. However, your pick is not reliant upon Nintendo, and that is...
Cuphead and the Delicious Last Course.
Yep.
Or Cuphead, The Delicious Last Course.
The Delicious Last Course. Final DLC for Cuphead.
Yeah. And I admit I didn't actually finish this because it's really freaking hard.
It's even harder than the
it is
base game. I'll say this, though. This did get me to go back and play this again.
Yeah, and it's just...
it's still hard as balls.
It's really hard, but it is just like you want to keep playing it because it looks so nice. Like, it's such a good... Like, I don't know if any other game in the last, like, handful of years has nailed its art style quite the way this thing does. Just
watch this footage, by the way.
Yeah.
So this is obviously the people who made the game playing. Mm-hmm. It is bonkers what the player is doing in this footage. Like
you can't do this unless you know what every single move these bosses are going to do is going to result in.
Yeah.
Like, you have to know that that's what that eyeball is going to do ahead of time, like, because they're ahead of it. And this is, that's classic old school, shmup gameplay.
Yeah.
Really, like
that's really what this game
you ain't
ultimately
beating Radiant
is.
Silvergun the first time you play it, folks.
Right.
Like, that's just sort of how it goes.
Yeah.
But it does feel good, and it's rewarding to play. And it's a good, like, I'm going to put this in and play one fight, and that's it kind of thing. Like you do where you're waiting for your wife to get ready. Like, this would be a good game for that kind of thing.
Yep. You want to leave the house in a rotten mood.
Yeah, maybe not good for attitude, but
yeah, I mean, it's really a lot of pattern memorization, which is old school. That's where we come from. I mean, this game is straight out of like the 16-bit or 8-bit eras, or the arcade era.
Yeah, and it gives you another character. You can play her through the whole main game as well if you want.
Yep.
It integrates into the main game, which I think is I like it when, like, DLC expansions do that.
Well, I like it too because it got me to go back and play some of the old stages where I had, like, you can see your scores. It's like, can I do better now? No, yeah. I was not able to do better now.
Let's not do that to myself. Yeah.
So I did go back and, like, go through the overworld and try a couple of the old missions again and then try the new DLC. So you're right, like, integrating it into the game got me to go back and play not just the DLC again, but the bulk of the game again as well, which is also excellent. So it is an acquired taste. Like, I wouldn't recommend Cuphead to just anybody. But anybody like us who's older, absolutely. Anybody like people in our chat right now, absolutely. Hardcore gamers, eat it up. Casuals, not so much. And that's Cuphead. Think they'll make a sequel to Cuphead?
No, I think they said they were done.
Oh, really? They said that they were done with it? Oh, okay.
They're going to move on to something else.
But hopefully something just as cool and good.
Yeah, I mean, I hope they do something else with that kind of art style, but a different style.
No one else is doing it.
Yeah, they've found a niche that no one else, I think, would even dare challenge them in.
And so. I dare say I do hope their next game's a little easier.
Yeah, it would be. I think something a little more accessible,
manageable might be a good idea.
Might be a move.
I mean, they've done well with Cuphead.
They did really well, but also, like, I think you could have a 10 million seller on your hand if you made
that craftsmanship.
Yeah,
deserves more sales.
Yeah, like you made something that was a little more family friendly. Not in terms of content, but in terms of, like, people aren't going to scream at this Christmas morning. Like, I think they could be you could have a Ratchet and Clank style hit on your hands.
Yep. My pick for best platformer is Kirby and the Forgotten Land. First 3D platformer starring Kirby. I had tons of reservations about this. I thought it might be a complete disaster. I ended up absolutely loving it. I don't know that it's good enough or it sold well enough, although as it turns out, it did sell pretty damn well, that their next Kirby game is going to be a 3D platformer. I have a feeling it'll probably go back to its 2D roots, and this is something that we get like once every like 10 years or something like that. But it was great. Like, I also loved how they incorporated Kirby's abilities into the game. Something else that may or may not make sense within the context of a 3D environment. However, they all were great in this. It was fun and exciting to get new forms of Kirby. I feel like the structure of the game was a little dated. You kind of just have like this menu that you go to all the different worlds. It felt like a 2D Mario game, but 3D Kirby instead. But Kirby's world, I felt translated well into 3D. I thought the art in the game was good. It wasn't garish like a lot of Kirby games can be.
Because it's not his world.
Yeah, you're right. He's in the Forgotten Land, and I like that. Like, I'm not a big fan of Kirby's world, to be perfectly honest with you, Matt. Like, it's like a unicorn vomited or had diarrhea a lot of the time. But like this stuff, like being able to suck things up and turn into them, it was just, I just felt like around every corner there was something interesting happening, and it always caught me off guard. And a lot of that had to do with the different transformations, like playing as a traffic cone. Who would have ever thought you'd play as a traffic cone in a video game? Did you do that in Geist? I can't remember if that's one of the things you possessed.
I think I remember about Geist is possessing the dog food.
Right. But I had a ton of fun with this game. The craftsmanship, I talk about that a lot, in this game was impeccable. Just look at that right there. Like the water inside Kirby right there. Like, there's a lot of TLC that went into this game. I do think like some of these parts, like the overworld and things like that, the hub world that you went back to, that felt a little dated to me. But for a first 3D attempt at Kirby ever, which is hard to believe, I thought they did an excellent job. And I do hope that the next one is even more freeform. And I do hope that the next Mario 3D platformer is a little more freeform. And I feel like the last DLC we got for Mario kind of hinted at that. It was like this big open world.
I think Bowser's Fury is your preview of what the next Mario is going to look like.
And I hope that they do that as well with the next Kirby game and any 3D platformer that Nintendo makes going forward. But this was a great first start in 3D for Kirby. I had a ton of fun with it. I highly recommend it if you're into these types of games. It was well executed and a lot of fun. And the best Kirby game I've played in a really, really long time, not being a gigantic Kirby fan to start with. So there you go, my pick for best platformer of 2022, Kirby and the Forgotten Land. All right, let's move on next to best driving game. People often ask, why on SIFTD is the genre called driving and not called racing? And that's because back in my days at GameSpot, Greg Kasavin came up with this clear delineation of why they chose to use best driving games, because back then especially, there were games where you drove a car, but the objective was not to win the race. It was back when there was lots of like vehicular battle games, like Smuggler's Run, and there's like... Back then, it was kind of a big thing, and it's disappeared since. But the reason we driving game is because there are some games where you pilot vehicles that you're not. The objective is not to win a race. So,
like I would say, like American Truck
there's
Simulator.
a good example. It would fall into this as well if it didn't suck.
I love that game.
I know. A lot of people do. I was just joking, but yeah. So that's
you gotta
why
mod that thing up.
Yeah. But this is another category that comes and goes in these awards, because there are some years now where there just aren't any driving games. They used to be a staple of the industry because they're so easy to make. Let's be honest.
Sometimes there's just like one, or like this. Even early on this, I'm just like, because the only driving game in my recent memory is Need for Speed. I ain't giving that an award.
There's no way I'm giving that any awards. That's not happening. But as it turns out, there were enough games for it to be a viable category this year. And Matt, what's your pick for best driving game of 2022?
Forza Horizon 5's Hot Wheels expansion.
You're rolling on your DLC kick here, these last couple categories.
One of the surest ways this year to get my attention was apparently just to add more content to something I already liked.
Seems like a solid strategy.
So the Hot Wheels stuff for Forza Horizon has traditionally been excellent. The last time they did it was great in 3. And this is, again, the same thing. I didn't stick with it forever because I do think they tried to make it a little more free roaming like the main game. And the problem with that is it's in the main game of Forza Horizon, you can just go off-road and drive straight to where you want to go to. And when you're on like a Hot Wheels track, you just have to kind of drive the roller coaster until you get where you're going. And if you turn the wrong way, God help you, because you got to do it again. So there's an element of that I just got tedious for me.
There's a whole lot of orange in this DLC.
But in terms of like just the driving stuff this year, this is the thing that kept my attention the best and made me go like, wow, this is cool what they're trying to do. No offense to Gran Turismo. But this did keep me playing longer.
This was the most short-term fun I had in a driving release this year. However, my pick for the best driving game of 2022 is Gran Turismo 7. And I just feel like it's a more full-featured, varied game. Look, I don't think this is perfect either. Mm-hmm. When I first played this,
pretty goddamn good for a GT though.
It is. Like, so when we first
did a really, really good job, like catching up with the times on this.
Agreed.
Game,
when we first played it, and we talked about it on GameFace, I really thought I was going to stick with this game for a while.
So did I.
But
I did not.
I did not either. After like a week and a half after we talked about it, I never went back and played it again. Yep. But I'll say this too. Polyphony has been making tons of changes and tweaks to this to make it better. So maybe I should go back and give it another go.
I thought about giving it another try at some point.
But it's
like when I was like, well, when things calm down and there's not as many releases, I'm like, so I'll see you in May, maybe. If you're, I mean, it's.
I mean, I'll be honest.
No room in my life for GT right now.
It's a big commitment, and I'll say this too: if Need for Speed Unbound had been even like kind of competent in a couple different ways, it probably would have won over this, because I do like the atmosphere, the energy, and the style of Need for Speed Unbound way more than this.
Need for Speed Unbound should have been, I think, both of our favorite.
It should have, based upon what games we like,
what it was, what they're doing, what they attempted,
and what we like. Yeah, it should have been, but it just wasn't good enough. No. That's the bottom line. It was just flawed. And so this is, I believe, the best Gran Turismo since like Gran Turismo 3, like Ace-Spec.
I'd agree with that. Yeah.
And that's a big deal, because Gran Turismo
that's also the last Gran Turismo I played as much as I played this one.
Yep, me too.
I played Ace-Spec more, but like it was the last time I really looked forward to starting it up again every day.
Yeah. So, and I mean, look, this isn't a perfect game, but there was no perfect driving game this year.
No, not
even close.
Not a long shot, no.
Yep. So I think we did it right. I think one of us picking Hot Wheels and the other picking Gran Turismo 7 feels right. Mm-hmm. And that's how it's played out for us in 2022. Who knows if we even have this category next year?
We got Forza next year.
Forza Motorsport.
Be interesting to see. I mean,
if that won't be boring as watching paint dry.
They've been off so long. You know, it's been so long since the last one. It's like, well, did they spend their time revamping and learning a lot of stuff, or is it going to be the same slog again?
I haven't been a fan of Motorsport for the last several entries, so
I skipped 7. Yeah, I didn't even bother.
They're just too dry and dull. Yeah. And I'll say that was one thing that I was afraid of with Gran Turismo 7 that it managed to avoid.
Yeah, because that was the thing, is like Motorsport used to be less dry and dull than Gran Turismo. Yeah, right around the time each one come out, because there was an element of Forza that always. I'd always remember to celebrate the cars. I always remember like why we're here, why we love these things, and why we love driving. And GT never really seemed to do that. It was just sort of a very clinical.
They do it in this one, though.
And in this one they tried to figure that out, and I think they more or less got there.
Yeah.
So well done, Polyphony. Only took you 6 games.
It's headed in the right direction, the franchise. So, and I think it'll probably be 5 or 6 years till we get another one. So it's. And
I'm hoping that like that aspect of GT7 was maybe a kick in the pants for Forza's developers to say like, oh, we got to up our game on that.
It's a little funny that it was announced with the Xbox Series X, and here we are 2 years later.
It's taken a while.
So there might be some tweaks going on there.
Could be some tweaks. It could be having trouble getting I'm sure they want that thing to be the best looking game on the system.
That could be. They saw Gran Turismo 7 and like, oh, snap.
Yeah, you gotta step up.
Yeah.
Like, ray tracing better work on that sucker.
We'll see. Yeah, that's a good point. So anyway, there you go. Those are our picks for best driving game of 2022. Next up, another category that sometimes is hard to find nominees and winners for, and this year it was just the cup overfloweth, and that is best strategy game. Another genre that both Matt and I enjoy, although I would argue you probably like it a little bit more than me, but we both really love it. So it was really hard for me to pick the winner this year. I'm sure it was for you too, Matt, but what was it?
This is Marvel's Midnight Suns.
Shocker. After this week's episode of GameFace, I don't think anybody will be surprised to hear that this
there were some good strategy games. Before Marvel came out, I really did not think Fire Emblem. Yeah, I actually no. Fire Emblem was an action game, wasn't it?
Which Fire? Oh, Three Houses.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was like a Muso, pretty much.
That was a Muso.
Yeah.
I think I forgot that came out this year for a while there, but there was still some good strategy. Diofield Chronicles I liked.
Yeah.
And
Triangle Strategy.
I didn't play Triangle Strategy.
Oh, you didn't?
I never got around to it.
It's good.
I'm sure it is.
Yeah. It's gotten some nominations here and there.
But yeah,
this Game of the Year
one
awards.
caught me completely off guard. I expected to like it. It was Marvel. I'd probably be like, oh, that's fine. It's Marvel. But no, I put like 50 hours into this thing.
Are you done with it?
No, it's still going. I mean, a lot of that's just me like grinding away on stupid missions because I want more to do this and upgrade this and whatever. But I definitely hit a point where like all the side stuff stopped moving forward because I just wasn't far enough in the main story yet.
Oh.
So then I started moving on that more, and then The Witcher came out with its next gen patch, and that's gonna have to Marvel's gonna probably have to wait for a while.
It's taking my time too. Witcher 3 next gen.
Yeah, this is great. It's really a really good strategy system. Like it's a little more of a puzzle than kind of the hardcore strategy tactics stuff of XCOM, but I think that works for the license.
IGN put this in its best RPG category.
Okay.
I was like,
anything's an RPG if you squeeze hard enough, I guess.
Okay.
I mean, half the game is kind of like BioWare conversation, friendship, romance. I mean, you're not romancing.
There are some elements in there,
but I would not call this anything other.
This is a turn-based strategy game.
Turn-based strategy game. At heart, yeah. But also, you don't spend much of the game dressed like that. The characters spend most of their time recognizable as themselves in the outfits. Like those outfits are like, you get those outfits if you complete a certain challenge when you max out friendship with them. Mm-hmm. The rest of the time they are dressed however you want to be dressed, and that is usually standard Marvel costumes for them. For me. There's a lot of color options, but most of the color options kind of suck. So everybody was pretty much in their default costume for most of the game for me.
Okay.
And I was fine with that.
Yeah, I would prefer that for sure. But yeah, you just talked about this for like literally, I think it was like almost an hour.
Like an hour, yeah.
So you probably don't need to discuss it too much. I don't think anyone's surprised that this is your favorite strategy game. I played it. I also thought it was really great. But I've only spent now at this point maybe like 4 or 5 hours on it. Because again, like you, The Witcher 3 showed up and I was like, oh, this game's still really awesome. And I dove into that. I'm trying to finish God of War. That is one of those games that probably in the dry month of January, I'm going to go back and probably spend a lot more time with this game. And it probably affects also why it's not my pick for Best Strategy Game of 2022. And that is a game that I spent a lot more time with. And that is Mario plus Rabbids Sparks of Hope. I don't know if I would say I'm more partial to the Mushroom Kingdom than I am Marvel's characters. In fact, probably Marvel would win over that if you ask me.
Yeah, that wouldn't even be a competition for me.
But what put this game over the top for me is how the gameplay has changed in this. Although I would argue that there are some tweaks in Midnight Suns as well to the XCOM formula that I didn't expect.
Yeah, I did think of this when I was playing Midnight Suns a couple times in terms of they're both wholly unafraid to break what would have been considered rules of turn-based strategy.
And
before.
No one would have complained if they stayed the same.
No,
because
but every time they did break a rule, it generally made it better.
Yeah. I love the open-ended combat in this. How you can approach everything and you're not on this like, it's my turn, it's your turn. Here's a grid. You can only go 5 spaces on this grid. It's just, I have a feeling that strategy games are going to be like this from now on. If people try to do more active combat, this is going to be the template that they follow going forward. Now, the story in this, not as good as Midnight Suns. The interaction between characters, also not as good as Midnight Suns. But as you guys all know, if you spent any time on SIFTD or Game Trailers or anywhere else I've worked, gameplay always trumps pretty much everything for me. And the gameplay in this, they managed to find a new way to do strategy games. And that's a big deal for me. I'm also a big innovation guy. It's also very charming. Like, I feel like they handled the license very well. I also like the fact that the Rabbids were kind of put on the back burner for this, and they focused more on Nintendo's characters. I felt like there was a little bit too much Rabbid in the first entry. I feel like basically every change that they made to this from the first game was the right move and really smart. So I had a ton of fun with this. I felt like also every stage, it's also bite-sized, like there's not a huge commitment, but I also felt like every stage I could find a different way to get through it and complete it. I just thought that this is I feel like one of the better games of the entire year. I was really impressed with this game. You will not regret it if you buy it. Also nice and...
It's also very friendly in terms of which characters you want to use.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I didn't find a bad team.
Nope, I didn't either. I found that I could like mix it up with any character. So if there's certain characters in the Mario universe you don't like, you don't have to play as them. You can form a team with other characters that is going to be just as effective.
Or if you don't want any Rabbids,
right?
You can do that.
Yeah, which, hey, that's me.
Yeah, sure.
I'm not a fan of Rabbids at all. It feels like they're only in here because
Neither am I, but
Ubisoft made the game.
It was real hard to give up Rabbid Peach's mortar cannon.
Yeah.
That was a solid. But I would. To me, this was more like. To me, this was more like it took what Valkyria Chronicles did and actually advanced it.
Yeah.
In a way that Valkyria Chronicles could have if Valkyria Chronicles was less afraid to evolve.
Yeah.
And that was pretty cool.
Yeah. 2 great picks for best strategy game. Again, I think it's good that our tastes are slightly different, that we're able to recognize both of those great strategy games for 2022. You can't go wrong with either one. I think I would argue that if you like more active combat, go with Mario Rabbids. If you like more thoughtful and to be fair to IGN, a little more RPG stuff, then I think Midnight Suns is probably the better pick. But you can't go wrong with either one. They're both great. Next up, this is one I almost eliminated, Matt, from the awards this year. Because I was like, what is this becoming, this category?
It's just a game that's still supported.
But I just feel like, what am I rewarding here? It's like, it's basically like a different name for best DLC award.
Yeah.
That's really what it kind of comes down to. Because these are just platforms now, and it's like, which of these platforms added the most interesting, compelling stuff to it this year? That's kind of how I pick best game as a service. I don't know if you have a different angle that you look at, but
pretty much. Like, that's certainly what I picked.
Yeah. And your pick is
No Man's Sky.
Yeah.
Which has consistently been one of the best supported games on the planet.
It's unreal.
For the last 6 years of its existence. And it's also unrecognizable.
It's the biggest turnaround story, I think, in the history of video games. As far as what a game was like when it launched compared to what it's like 5 or 6 years later, it is really mind-boggling.
And just taking on board criticism and requesting things and
listening.
I think everything that people were saying, like, well, I wish it had this back when it came out. I think everything people said back then about that is in the game now.
It is. Oh, yes. And then some.
And more. Yeah, and more than that. Like,
I feel like they're really running out of significant stuff to add.
I would have said that 2 years ago, but they keep
That's true.
They keep coming up with stuff.
That's true.
Like,
That's a good point.
And he said, they said they still got more stuff coming.
Yeah.
They're going to do it at least another year.
I wonder how many people are playing at this point.
Every time they do an update, the Steam concurrent goes up, and a couple times it's been over 1 million.
Wow.
Like, millions of people still play this when new updates hit.
That's amazing. But it has. It's almost unrecognizable now compared to what it was when the game launched. Even compared to 2 years ago, it's almost unrecognizable.
Yeah, and even as someone who, obviously I liked it when it came out, everything improves it. Except the most recent update was messier, I thought, because it broke tech slots. And it was one thing to upgrade that. It was another to make half of my technology unusable because I didn't have enough tech slots in my ship anymore.
Yeah.
So my guns basically didn't work.
Oh, geez.
And so I had to go around and do I did know how to kind of game the system to get more slots and upgrade things. So I did that, but it took me a couple hours to get my character functioning again after what they did for that. And what they did was, it is a better way to do it. It's just they didn't really take into account what that was going to do to people who had, I have 400 hours in that game. And
that's insane.
Just that save.
Right.
And it's just like, for a while I'm like, did you just make my fucking character useless? And no, they didn't. But it was, there's some changes that took some getting used to and some adjustment. And I felt that they could have smoothed that out for the long time players a little more. But other than that, everything, I check in on that game every couple of weeks usually just to see how things are going and, harvest my enriched activated iridium or an indium or whatever it is, which is now worth almost nothing.
Oh, really?
They nerfed that in the new update. The new update was a little bit of like, you broke a bunch of stuff we were all kind of taking advantage of.
Yeah.
It used to be able to sell a haul of the activated indium for I think 75 million something, and now it's more like 7 million.
Yeah.
But I have 2.5 billion credits, so I'm not really worried.
You'll be all right.
Yeah.
Yep. I think that's a good pick. My choice for best game as a service for 2022 may come as a surprise to some people, and it is Fortnite. Believe it or not, a game that I probably talk more trash about than I should, because I'll just be honest, I've never really got it. Like, this is like the cute game that my nieces and nephews play. Like, for whatever reason, I never really have taken it all that seriously. But the good news is that Epic takes it exceedingly seriously, but not so seriously that there are sacred cows that it's afraid to touch. And to me, this year was the year where Epic was like, all bets are off. I mean, when you take out the building from Fortnite, that shows that you are brave and you believe that your audience is big enough that it can support multiple ideas. I mean, to me, Fortnite, what separated the great Fortnite players from me, someone who's just pretty good at shooters, was the building. Like, there's lots of times where I get down to where I was like the last couple people in Fortnite Battle Royale, and the last two people left are crazy builders. And I basically just lay down and just give up. I'm not kidding. I'm just like, I can't kill you. Because you can build a house in front of me, and I can shoot it, and I can't blow it up as fast as you can build another one. And so they could just toy with me, essentially, because I didn't know how to build. And for them to remove that stuff and create a playlist without any building at all, that's a big deal. And some may say it's a cop-out, like you're trying to appeal to people like me, who are just like typical first-person shooter players. I can understand that perspective a little bit, but it's all in the name of widening the audience. And then maybe, someone like me comes in and plays, and they're like, you know what? I'm going to try to build. And then it turns out that they're great builders, and that's what they love to do. So that, in conjunction with, withstanding that Mr. Beast is in here, and we talked about that on this week's GameFace, about how I wasn't a big fan of him being in the game. It's not that big a deal. I think for the most part, even though they've reached a law of diminishing returns with guest appearances in Fortnite, they still do a pretty good job of bringing new people into it, keeping it interesting. The fact that it's become like a platform for concerts and live events, that hasn't stopped this year. They've done a great job with that as well. I just think that this is one of the strongest years for Fortnite. And when I started looking at all the other games as a service, there was nothing that really stood out. Like Final Fantasy XIV didn't have a big release this year. Apex Legends, which was my pick last year, I would argue has had a weak year compared to last year. And that's kind of the way it goes sometimes. It goes in waves. So I just feel like this year was the year that Fortnite really turned up the heat, and they're like, you know what, we can't continue to rest on our laurels. We really need to start branching out and trying some new ideas. And they did, and they executed them well, and it's done the game well. It's done Epic well. They're making just as much money off of Fortnite as they ever have after all of these years, which is just crazy. And I know in a week, I'll be sitting around the Christmas tree watching all my nieces and nephews opening up their V-Bucks cards that they get every year for Christmas. It's all they want.
Yeah, I don't have any kids in my family that are
Fortnite players.
I don't play Fortnite.
I mean, honestly, for me, buying stuff for all my nephews, I just got to buy V-Bucks cards, and they come over and hug me. That's all they want. I can buy them all this other cool stuff, and they'll look at it and they'll throw it aside. But they open that V-Bucks card, they dance around the Christmas tree. It's awesome. It's a great feeling to make kids feel that way. So I just think it was an especially strong year for Fortnite, and therefore I feel like it was worthy of winning Best Game as a Service for 2022.
I can't remember the last time I played Fortnite.
Yeah.
4 years?
I play it once a year, usually just to get footage, like for B-roll for the show, because we'll talk about it inevitably.
I think I tried to play it when they did that big kaiju battle thing, and I couldn't get it to work properly, or the account wasn't set up right, or I couldn't get in, or whatever. I
have problems where I've played it on so many different platforms that I'll have like one account where I have like this stuff unlocked on one platform, and then I go and play on PlayStation. I'm like, wait a minute, like where's all my cosmetics and stuff? Oh, this account I haven't played as much, so I haven't unlocked as much stuff. I haven't gone through a couple different battle passes, blah blah blah. So yeah, I feel you. Like I probably need to sit down and somehow unify my accounts because I've been played it on so many platforms at this point. But there you go. Those are our picks for Best Game as a Service, and something that it doesn't seem like you guys play a lot of. Let's be honest. Next up, something we've hinted at a couple times already in our Game of the Year awards, and that is Best Story. Typically, you would think that the best story comes from an adventure game because that's usually the crux of that genre, but that's not really the case anymore. Some of the industry's best writers are working on all genres now, and I think you really see it. I feel like the writing in the games industry is better now than it has ever been.
Oh, for sure.
Just really strong across the board.
Just the fact that they hire writers now.
They care. Yeah. But they even care about it.
That's a big change.
It is. Yeah, because it used to be like the dude who was also doing some of the level design was writing the story for the games. It's like you had a lot of jack of all trades in game development in the early days. Now you just have a writer.
And every once in a while you'd run, like back in the old days, you'd run into something where like even if it was kind of not a great game, if it had a decent writer behind it, like it was memorable in a way that the other games at the time weren't.
Yep.
That was definitely true of the FMV era.
Yeah.
But my go-to on that is actually Soviet Strike, which was a pretty mediocre helicopter combat game on the Saturn and PlayStation 1. Or at least very hard. It was just obtuse in a way. It was needlessly difficult at a certain point. But it had these FMV cutscenes that were done sort of like Tom Clancy meets like rapid fire MTV cutting, and like all these characters just like it's like what is it? Break it down to components. Go. And it was weirdly compelling and memorable. I remembered it for years. And eventually, I found out when I was at a Writers Guild meeting that Flint Dille wrote that. Who was the guy who wrote like the G.I. Joe and Transformers cartoons back. He's been a writer for cartoons and TV for forever. And I was like, oh wow! I said to him like, oh wow! Like I started quoting lines of this, and he just looks at me and he turns around to one of his friends back in the back of the room and goes, "This guy's quoting Soviet Strike lines." And the guy goes, it's Flint with his nerd harem again. And
that's funny.
I mean, he appreciated that.
Yeah, of course.
But it was like after all this, I'm like, no wonder all that stuff stuck with me. It wasn't some rando programmer had to do double duty trying to like write a story for like so he wouldn't get fired. It was they hired a guy who's
actually hired someone who writes,
written kind of mid-range action stuff for 20 years at that point.
Yep.
And nowadays they hire there's dedicated writers on staff who just write the game.
That's all they do.
Or you got people like Neil Druckmann who is he's the writing brain behind Last of Us, and he's also running the show. So that kind of thing didn't really exist then either.
Also, a lot of our colleagues or former colleagues that's what they do now.
Yeah.
They left games journalism to go into development, and now they write. Joe Fielder, the guy who gave me my big break in the industry, who hired me at GameSpot, fresh-faced kid out of college with a journalism degree, he's now he writes for all these. He wrote Pentiment.
Yeah.
He's writing like every game now. He's working on Judas with Ghost Story. Like he's working on like tons of stuff. And what was the one girl from IGN who works on? Actually, I don't want to spoil your pick, which is
God of War Ragnarok.
Yep. And a girl from IGN is one of the writers on God of War Ragnarok now.
Yeah. And this did not get like I wouldn't call it an adventure game, obviously.
Yeah.
I haven't finished the game yet, and it's kind of slow going. But I gave it this largely because I really do want to know what happens. Mm-hmm. That's why I'm still playing.
Yeah. There's lots of twists and turns in this game,
and presentationally,
things you wouldn't expect, especially watching this promotion in particular.
Like,
you never would have guessed how the game plays.
In terms of like presentation, there's nothing on par with this.
Yeah.
In the rest of the year, in games the rest of the year, it's just. And obviously that is because Sony Santa Monica has the time, budget, and leeway to do that, but it still counts.
What I like most about, one of the things I really like about the story in this is it doesn't fall back on the cheap tropes like the walk and talk.
No, it does still do the squeezy stuff for the load times, but it does not walk and talk.
Narratively, I'm saying though, there's hardly any walk and talks. There's a little bit of it when you're in the canoe. Yeah,
there's like a whole section of that I would say with Atreus and the girl he meets.
Yep.
But for the most part, the other thing I really like about this is, they have the random conversations while you're moving around or whatever. And one of the things that bugs me in games is if you're having a conversation with somebody and then you trigger something, you trip a flag or you activate something, and that conversation just kind of sort of stops and goes away. This game remembers if something happens, like somebody, usually Kratos, will be like, no time, we have to focus on this.
Yeah.
And then once you get back to a non-action or non-puzzle part, someone will be like, so what were you saying about that thing? And they just pick
you're
it
right,
up
man.
Right there. And I think that's
what?
very
I never
cool.
even picked up on that until you just mentioned it.
Yeah, it's very
and
cool.
I've played that game for like 40 hours at this point.
And they did do that in the first one, but it was not as reliable, I think.
Yeah, I think the vehicle and the methods of the storytelling in this are just as good as the writing and the actual story itself.
They find a way to give you different perspectives because you're not just Kratos the whole time. I think everybody's very compelling in terms of their even the so-called villains and the bad guys. Like, you see where they're coming from. They're not two-dimensional in terms of that. There are elements where you're like,
also, by the way, lots of late game stuff in this trailer. I would add, like, It's so funny when you watch these trailers after you've actually finished the games and you see like how brave they were with putting late game stuff in. And wow, this trailer is loaded with late game
Especially
content.
when like so much of that footage like leads you to believe that that's when they run into tier.
Right.
And it's not.
No.
Remotely.
Nope. Yeah. I agree with you. The story's great. I'll be honest with you. In a lot of cases, it's been what's pushed me through on this game.
Yeah,
because there are some lulls in the game. Like, there's a section in the middle for a couple hours where nothing really happens, and you're just kind of grinding along.
There's some points where I just like I feel like they've shown me everything they got gameplay and puzzle wise, and I just want to know
puzzle wise definitely. I feel like they run out of ideas real fast in this.
One of the things that I thought was an interesting shift in this game is that last game I couldn't get enough of kind of the semi open world exploration, finding stuff and getting stuff things, and it's
not worth the effort
now. Yeah, the stuff you find doesn't feel worth it anymore.
I agree with you. Yep. Still, it's a great story.
Yeah. Absolutely, and obviously the performances are way up. The performances are basically is what you expect from a first-party Sony game at this point.
Yeah, I don't think anybody will guess if they haven't played this where the story goes in this.
No, it's
because they definitely misled. I feel like with the market, which is fine.
Which they should.
Yeah, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that, but they did. Like what I thought the story was going to be about before I played it versus what it really is, two different things.
And it certainly is about that at the beginning.
Yeah,
but they get
very
past
quickly.
That real fast.
They did. Yeah. It doesn't take very long until it's something entirely different. So I think that's a great pick, Matt. It was absolutely my runner-up, but it did not win Best Story for me. And for me, the best story of 2022 was As Dusk Falls. This game's still an Xbox exclusive. Xbox and PC exclusive.
Yeah, they own them.
They own the studio.
I think they bought them, or they're about to buy them, or I think this is theirs.
So this is a choose your own adventure game. I know, Matt, you hated the art style in this, and I can understand where people could hate it. I actually thought it was really good. I thought it was there was a 5 or 10 minute period where I had to kind of get over it a little bit, and then once I did, I really started appreciating it because.
For me, it's more what we're going to see here, the mix of real moving 3D objects with the stylized 2D character portraits. I don't think works at all.
What I found though about this art style,
I think that looks terrible.
Yeah.
Just do the same dissolve thing to close the door. Why are they? I
agree with you on that. But to me, the art style in this, I thought did a great job of conveying the emotion of the characters better than any real-time facial animation in any game.
Once they're just in a room talking, I don't think about it anymore.
They really convey how they're feeling in this game. And the story in this is amazing. So it starts out, there's this family, they're driving on a road trip together, the grandpa's in the car, they're fighting with each other. They're moving to St. Louis, you don't know why. They stop at this gas station, and basically all hell breaks loose. They get caught up in a robbery at the gas station, and from there, it just spirals on. And this is also, like all modern adventure games, where you make your decisions. It has a huge bearing on what happens later. So much so in this game. This is the first adventure game I've played in a really long time where I wanted to go back and play it again to get a different result. Because the results are extreme in this. It completely affects, who lives, who dies, the ultimate outcome of the story. There were so many moments in this game, Matt, where I was paralyzed and I could not choose the option. The other thing I would say about this, the options in the dialogue trees are very nuanced, and you need to read every word because there could be one little word in there that tips you off to what could be the outcome of that decision that you make. And so once you realize that's happening, it became excruciating for me to sit there and decide what I wanted to do, because also you start to realize very quickly that your decisions do have major consequences. So I really, really love the story in this game. I really love this game in general. I do get that the art style could be off-putting for some people. Totally respect that opinion. It did take me about 10 minutes before I kind of got over the hump, but I really enjoyed it ultimately overall. But I've never been put... The positions that this game put me in, I've never been put in a video game before. I've never had to make decisions in the vein that you have to make in this, where there's really, it's not good or bad. It's shades of bad or shades of good, or this decision could be good or it could be bad. And so
that's what David Cage is trying to do.
Right, but he fails.
Not pulling off.
And this pulls it off.
Yeah, and these are, I think, ex-Quantic Dream people.
Ah.
Some of the people involved in this are people who left Quantic Dream, which I think indicates that, I wasn't as over the moon on the story on this as you were, but it does indicate that, freed from his influence and oversight, these people have
there were talented
good
people there.
storytelling
Yeah.
in their.
It also could be a case where they've been sitting on this for 6 years.
Oh, I wouldn't have shared this with
and this
him.
is
Yeah,
right, and this is their one really good idea, and they're now we'll see what happens. But for this entry, I loved it. I got totally sucked into the character. I love this kid. I totally cared what happened to this kid. He's like the person in the middle between the bad guys and the good guys who can go either way, and sometimes he hints that he actually is a bad guy like the other people, and sometimes he shows rays of kindness. Like, I loved it. I thought the character development in this was great. I loved all the characters in it. I cared about every single one of them. Stuff that happened in this I never would have guessed in a million years. Just completely caught off guard by situations and people who show up in specific scenes and how it all wraps together and folds back on each other. Just great. I loved As Dusk Falls, and is my winner for the best story of 2022. Next up, Future Legend. This is where we pick a game that came out this year that we believe people will be talking about years and years from now. Generally, it's not necessarily the best game of the year, but it's kind of that game that everybody was talking about. There's something about that game that made it this thing that's bigger than just games, and that's Future Legend. So, Matt, what's your pick for Future Legend of 2022?
Mine could also have gone in game I didn't get, but Vampire Survivors.
Okay.
This game has, had a big reception online, especially. I played a little bit of it. It's fine. I don't. But it's like Undertale to me. It's like I had the same reaction under. I'm like, oh, that's cool. I'm done. Like it's like, whereas Undertale became like a way of life for some people. Like, I think Vampire Survivors is going to be that again. Like this thing is going to have a cult following that persists for years, and I think its success. And this is a mobile game made good, basically on PC and everything. And I'm sure it's coming to console and you won't be able to get away from this thing by mid next year. I feel like this is something that's going to have influence. It's going to have cachet. It's going to be everything that has even a remote, vague semblance to it is going to be compared to it going forward. And I think it's going to influence some things. So
I describe it as if the developers of the Atari 2600 games back in the day had already been making games for 20 years.
Yeah. There's an element of that. Also, like, this is maybe hard to articulate properly, but the graphics kind of remind me of like mid 90s or late 90s PC RPG. It makes me think of like Heroes of Might and Magic 3, which is like, it's like kind of a pleasant thing to me. I don't know how else to describe that.
It is a bizarre game. There's
it is like it's a bullet hell twin stick roguelike.
It's really weird. It's
and like if you're looking at this and being like, and you don't know what it is, and you're sort of like, I don't know what I'm looking at. Welcome to the club.
Yeah,
it's like that's pretty much what the game is.
That is what the game is. Yep.
I'm certainly never going to say don't try it because it might be your favorite game of the year.
Yeah.
It was not mine, but I've seen enough sort of underground game phenomena rise in the past that I think I see the same pattern here. So
and it's slowly coming out for like all platforms now too, because they're like, we have a hit. Like,
I think this will be like, Undertale is probably the closest thing. It's like, is it anyone your casual friend would know if you mention it to them? Not necessarily, but like, is it something that people are gonna like remember for years and years and years? Yeah, I think it is.
Okay, my pick for Future Legend is Elden Ring. So to me,
I argue you've already been proven right this year on this.
Like, this game reminds me of Animal Crossing New Horizons. It's that game that like everybody played, even some people who maybe weren't interested in it. Like,
it sold 15 million copies.
17 million.
A lot of people who didn't have interest in this kind of game before played this game.
And I have a feeling that when the next From Software game comes along, a lot of them will not line up to buy the next From Software game.
But I certainly have some friends who are like, "What's this Elden Ring thing?"
Yeah, but it's a story to tell.
And I would warn them, they're like, "Oh, maybe I'll try it." And they tried it and they liked it, and they're like, they're in. Like,
Yeah.
It's
I have people who tried it who did not like it.
Some people bounce off it, but more people liked it than disliked it, and that surprised me to some degree. I thought this would be more of like, oh, I thought it was cool, and then I tried to play it, and I can't figure out what I'm supposed to do. But just about everybody seems to get that thing where they get to the castle and they can't beat the boss, so they just fuck off and go do something else. And I'm like, that was the key. That was the key to Elden Ring in the end. That was the problem.
That you could just F off.
Yeah, the problem with the Souls games, I think, ended up being, in terms of accessibility, that if you got stuck, you were stuck.
You were stuck. There's no getting away from it. Yep. And in this, you can just get on the horse and ride around.
You have to beat your head against the wall. You can just go do whatever.
It helped me. It helped me play it a lot longer than I had other ones. But there's a lexicon around this game. There was a story around it because people bought it and some people hated it. And there was a whole story about like how, thousands of people are returning Elden Ring. And, there was, you could buy it on eBay for like $20 because there were so many on eBay. Like there's just stories around this game. I have a story around this game of sifters helping me get through it and me actually playing it for 20 hours versus like 4 hours like I usually play From Software's games. It's just, to me, this is the game everyone's going to remember from 2022. Like 15, 20 years from, you're going to be able to say, hey, remember Elden Ring? And everybody...
Be like, yeah, I'm playing Elden Ring 3 right now.
Yeah, or everyone's going to have a story. Oh, man, like, remember that one boss? Or, like you said, like, I got to the first boss, never beat it, and just ran around for the next 10 hours and had fun doing that. Like, it's just this thing that became bigger than the game itself. It became way bigger than I ever expected it to become. But it will be interesting to see what happens with their next game. And if people are willing to line up, knowing now, the casuals now knowing exactly what their games are like.
Well, one thing, I don't think that's going to be Armored Core.
Nope.
Because that's a very different thing.
No, definitely not. No, definitely not. I mean, their next like big RPG, and it probably will be Elden Ring 2. They'd be kind of stupid to not make Elden Ring 2, let's just be honest. So it'll be interesting to see if there's as much interest in Elden Ring 2 as there was in the first one. But it started with the reviews, all the perfect 10s, and sure, there's a story behind that too, that a lot of the fans of these games were the ones that reviewed it, but they set the snowball in motion that got people interested to give it a chance. And so now everyone's played it. It'll be interesting to see if they're willing to give From Software another chance with Elden Ring 2. But to me, there's no denying that it's the biggest story in games from 2022 as far as just video games are concerned. So my future legend, Elden Ring. Next up, fun category, most pleasant surprise from 2022. I felt like there was a lot this year. There's a lot of really disappointing things too, and we'll get to that in a second. But I thought there was a lot of pleasant surprises. A lot of games that came out this year. Like I would almost argue that the year in general was kind of a pleasant surprise because so many games were delayed out of the year, and it was really crappy in the middle, but it had a really strong start and a pretty strong finish. So ultimately, when we started getting all these delays, I think the year itself was kind of a pleasant surprise. It ended up being better than I thought because there were games that ended up being better than I thought they would be, like Midnight Suns. Yep. So what's your pick for most pleasant surprise of 2022?
Midnight Suns.
Because it is. It's a very pleasant surprise. It could have gone wrong in a million ways, right?
Yeah. Like, I was entirely ready for this to just be like, fine. Like, it would be like Ultimate Alliance 3.
Yeah.
Just be like, okay, that's cool that you did that. I like it's fine. It's fun.
Yep.
It's nice that it's here. I'm glad Elsa Bloodstone is in it. I wish Elsa Bloodstone was in this.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, I was very, very shocked by how good this was. It was just like, wow, like good. More and more, we're getting these Marvel games that sort of make that Avengers game look really bad. It's just like not even just bad, but just like needless.
You're seeing people who are getting it
to be that way.
Yeah.
Guardians and this, and obviously they're coming up on Spider-Man. Not that including Insomniac is especially fair,
right?
But it's like you're about to see Insomniac do that again with Spider-Man for the third time. Few years from now, we'll see them do the same thing with Wolverine. There's just no reason for that Avengers game to have been what that was. And this, if you were going to talk about any game in the Marvel licensed game lineup that could have, half-assed it, it's this one.
Oh, yeah.
And they absolutely did not.
The other thing, too, is that the developers really spread their wings for this game. This is not... I mean, it's in their wheelhouse, but they've really broken the mold.
You can see the pedigree of XCOM, and you can see where all that comes from, but they've gone way beyond anything they've attempted to do before. And hopefully it's sold enough to not have the rest of the team fired. So apparently this was a pretty long development process. So I don't know. I hope it worked out for them.
Yeah, I think it will. Not a lot of competition here in Q4, let's be honest, particularly for this genre. So I think it'll do well sales-wise. It'll probably be up to Marvel whether we get a sequel, though, right?
Yeah, it's probably Marvel's choice.
Do you think they'll be cool with doing one?
This thing nails the characters so well. I have a hard time believing they wouldn't be happy with it.
I agree.
It's going to have to sell a certain amount, but no,
reviews are high enough. It should
If I were at Marvel, I would be like, make as many of those as you want. In fact, they don't all have to be weird dark magic things. You could just do an Avengers game
That's true.
like that, and that would be great.
I would almost prefer that.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. So yeah, great first attempt, and it should only get better from there. I can't see why Marvel would not be cool with a sequel.
No.
Unless it just completely tanks.
I don't think it did.
I don't think it will. I don't think it will either.
Or if Firaxis has time. As Vincent says, if Firaxis has time.
Yeah, we haven't got MPDs yet for Midnight Suns, so
keep our fingers crossed. Big. I mean, look, it's not the same team that's making Civ.
Right.
And as I understand it, a lot of that team was let go.
Civ is still going strong. They're still putting out tons of DLC for Civ 6.
So, I mean, basically they'd have to expand to have another team that specifically works on these Marvel things.
Yeah.
Which there are worse things
worth it.
to have to do.
It's totally worth it. Yep. That's a good pick. My pick for most pleasant surprise, you may be surprised by this pleasantly, hopefully, is a Steam Deck. I don't even have a Steam Deck, but I have talked to dozens of people who do have them. I've read countless reports. I've watched countless YouTubers do profiles of the Steam Deck, and they all love it.
Okay.
But I think probably I want one. I just can't afford to spend $400 for one. I'll be honest. Like, if I could afford it, I would buy one.
I can afford it, and I would never buy this.
Really?
I don't understand it. I don't understand the point. I have a very powerful and good gaming PC with
my PC's getting old now.
Well, so is mine, but it still works. But it's like I would not want to. Why would I want to play a PC game on a tiny little screen like that?
Well, it's not that. It's not. You don't have to just play it on the tiny screen. You can plug it in and play it on your big TV. It's like a Switch for.
Do that with my own computer.
Switch like times 6.
Yeah, I don't get it. I'm just gonna go in the other room and play a PC game.
I've been impressed with it. I've also been impressed.
Not for the money, and I'm not impressed, but for the money. The price on this is 150 higher than it should be.
You think so?
Yeah, I think the price on this is obscene.
Really?
For the amount, especially because like you have to spend an obscene amount of money just to get one of the decent amount of storage that can hold more than like 2 games. Like I think the price.
But the tech that's in there is mind-boggling.
Yeah, but for no good reason.
For the form factor.
Yeah, but for no good reason.
But you say that, why are they flying off the shelves? I mean, they're not on shelves.
Because people, flying off the.
You know what I mean?
Steam.
Like, they're selling very well.
Yeah, but because I don't know, because people are obsessed with this handheld shit, and I don't get it. Like, I don't get it. I don't need that. Like, I get that. Like other people have children and spouses and other people in the house that use the TV, and I don't. So I don't ever need to give up my devices to other people. Yeah. So I just don't have that use case. Like, I'm never going to choose that.
I mean, the tech that's in the Steam Deck, though, like, you can plug it into your monitor, and it's like a beastly gaming PC.
I don't know about beastly.
I mean, it's better than what I have right now.
Sure,
like, a lot better. Like, obviously, it wouldn't sell if people didn't believe in it or think it was worth something.
Right. It's just, I don't get it.
But when I said rollout, I meant about how they've done their pre-orders, how they're shipping them out. Like, you never hear people bitching about, like, their Steam Deck. Like, they've been waiting and they canceled their orders.
That's all I heard when they first did it. Not anymore. But
well, this is for 2022.
Yeah, but after when they stared delaying things a year, like there was a lot
But once it started in 2022 in February, it has been smooth as butter. I haven't met anyone or talked to anyone who has a Steam Deck that regrets it or doesn't like it. I
also don't know anyone who has a Steam Deck who isn't one of us. Like, who isn't like a hardcore.
Yeah, I mean, those are the only people I know.
I don't know anyone who does. I don't know anyone who has a Steam Deck who isn't industry.
Yeah.
I don't know a normal person who has a Steam Deck.
I don't either. Yeah. But I think that the other thing, too, is that a lot of people feel like they're hard to get when they're really not. Like, you just put your name on the list.
I mean, you got to wait.
You just wait.
But it's not like, they'll take your order right now if you want. It's not like PS5 where you have to, like, beg for access.
But like when I said I'm impressed with the rollout, I'm comparing their rollout to the rollout of the PS5 and the Xbox Series X, which has been a disaster. So for Valve, who isn't even supposed to be good at this stuff.
And hasn't been.
You're right. Hasn't been. For them to knock it out of the park with the Steam Deck, to me, it's the most pleasant surprise. Because, Matt, you got to realize pleasant surprise means that you weren't expecting much.
Yeah.
So I was like you. I was like, oh, this is dumb. This is going to be a failure. No one's going to like it. People are going to get it. They're going to be a piece of junk. They're going to complain about it. None of that happened. So to me, it's a pleasant surprise compared to where I was before it started rolling out in February. I really thought there would be a lot of backlash, people saying it overheated or the frame, like it got too hot and the frame rate started bogging down. Like none of that stuff has happened. They've built this great kit of hardware that you can take on the go, or you can plug into a monitor and play like a Switch. So pleasant surprise for me, I think it was the Steam Deck. Next up. Most disappointing. There are plenty of options to choose from for this, Matt. In fact, this was
a lot of these.
This was probably the hardest category that I had to pick for the entire award. It's like shades of awful. That's basically what it was like picking the winners for this. Matt, what was your most disappointing game, product, whatever for 2022?
Well, there are a lot of options.
There are so many.
But in the end, I picked the thing that I thought should have been the biggest slam dunk and wasn't, which was Saints Row.
Yeah.
Saints Row, I felt, was kind of a solved problem.
It's a special kind of screw up.
And wow.
No,
like I wasn't expecting a Game of the Year candidate. I wasn't, obviously I wasn't expecting Saints Row to blow the doors off anything. I wasn't ready for how subpar this was.
Yep.
I wouldn't say it's super bad. Like I still enjoyed.
It's pretty bad, Matt.
But like it's such a step down from the last few Saints Row games.
It was broken. It was, if it wouldn't break, it was buggy. The game looks bad. The missions are dumb. Some of them are just flat out broken.
And it's really short.
Yeah.
Like, if you just do the main missions are over like that.
Yep.
And it feels like a prologue to something.
know. I agree with you. I think it's very disappointing. I expected way more from this. Again, I didn't expect it to be a Game of the Year contender.
No, but
particularly when we thought this year was going to be amazing.
Yeah,
before the game.
But I would call myself a Saints Row fan overall. I like the Saints Row games, and this was.
I would argue that they lost like some of the special sauce from Saints Row as well. Like I didn't find it as funny or entertaining as it typically is.
And I mean, part of it is just like they tried to kind of go a little more grounded with it, and I don't see the point.
Yeah.
Like obviously you cannot really continue off of Saints Row 4 because you destroyed the planet
and
turned it into a space opera. But like, and they there's way too much time spent with the LARPing thing. It's just. I don't know, like a lot of it, and like you see like the shot of like the plane going between the buildings there. That maybe at the end of the game, like there's very little verve to it. You're just
this game tried to go everywhere and went nowhere.
And it feels very old, like it's like the old GTA's where it was just like okay, just drive here, now shoot this guy, now drive here. There's no imagination in any of it.
Checkpoint gaming,
which is weird for Saints Row. Usually Saints Row has some good twists and things, and it's at least some interesting ideas or like some funny twists on standard missions. But you go through the standard motions in this game way too often for me to buy all of its irreverent humor. Because I'm like, for all the whole like haha fuck the system stuff, they're just doing what everyone's already done, and they're doing things they made fun of other games doing in their other games.
You're right.
Like, it's such a weird.
They broke their own fourth wall.
It just feels like a massive step backwards. And even if they had been technically solid and didn't have the bugs and all the unfinished problems in it, like it would just felt like a big step back. And like part of that is I guess they wrote themselves in a corner with how crazy they got with 4 and Gat Out of Hell. But also like there's ways to go with that weren't just sort of like Saints Row 2 with no tech vetting. Like it just didn't work.
Yeah, agreed. Yep. And you got to remember too, with disappointing, there has to be a level of expectations. And you're a big Saints Row fan, so you're like, it can't be worse than the last one, and it was pretty good. So
whoops.
Thus the disappointment.
And that's even if you're considering the last one, Agents of Mayhem, which I didn't particularly like, but still thought was better than this.
Yep. Well, my pick for most disappointing game of 2022 is the Callisto Protocol.
This was also up there.
We've also just recently talked about this, so I'm not going to beleaguer it too much here on our Game of the Year awards. If you want to get our full opinions on this, you can just check out the latest episode of GameFace. But again, this category, part of it is expectation. So I talked about the last category, how I had low expectations for Steam Deck, and it blew past them. I had extremely high expectations for this, and it underwhelmed. I still can't understand how the person who created these games makes one of these games like 14 years after his first one, and it's not as good as the first one he made 14 years earlier. That, to me, is mind-boggling. It's why I had such high expectations for this. It's like, hey, Glenn, yeah, you laid down this template 14 years ago. What are you going to do with it now? And he did nothing with it. Like, the changes that he made for this compared to Dead Space, nobody requested those changes.
No.
He changed the stuff that people liked and didn't change the stuff that people didn't like. So, to me, I was really excited for this game. This is right in my freaking wheelhouse. These are the games that I typically really love. And, you know, I'm also a gameplay first guy, and the gameplay in this felt sluggish and detached. Just really ultimately disappointed. This to me, this game is all flash and no substance. You watch this trailer, you're like, hot damn, that game looks awesome. And then you start playing, you're like, wait a minute, where did that game go that I saw?
Well, I see through the trailer now.
Right.
But part of it's just like it's you know, like Dead Space's hook for me is how many options it gives you with the combat and how creative you can get with how to deal with things, and there isn't really that in this game. It's but on the good side, the Dead Space remake went gold. So
Yep. Maybe we'll be saved here. Is it January it comes out?
Yeah.
Yeah, so soon.
Late January.
But that's Glenn's game that they're remaking. It'll be interesting to see if they made it better than Glenn's new game. Probably.
It would have to be.
Yeah, they'd have to screw up pretty bad.
Unless they took that pistol out. Took the mining pistol out. I don't see it, you know.
That's true. That's a good point.
The gameplay loop and hook of Dead Space is inherently more interesting than Callisto Protocols.
Yep.
That's the problem.
Yeah, it's true. Okay, up next, biggest news story. There weren't a lot of big game releases this year, but there were a lot of big news stories.
A lot of things
It was
happened.
kind of an insane year.
News. There's certainly a lot of news.
Yeah, yeah, not enough games, but more than enough news. And Matt, to you, what was the biggest story of them all from 2022?
I think that'd have to be Microsoft attempts to purchase Activision Blizzard.
I think that's the only answer. I picked something different just because...
It's the only thing that caused international legal problems.
Yeah,
So
I picked something different because I'm just like, well, I'll pick something else. We can discuss something else.
Yeah, I can't do the same thing.
But you're right. This is the biggest news story, and it's still ongoing, and it's going to continue right into 2023. And I'm still completely flummoxed by what the hell is going on.
I don't know. Sony seems to have convinced the courts or the FTC that only Activision can make first-person shooters or something.
Yeah, and no one else can do it, apparently. There's no logic behind it at all. And so this is going to drag on. It may even get to the point where we get to July, the deadline, and the deal doesn't close. And then does Microsoft owe like $2 billion or something, or $3 billion if the deal doesn't close by July?
I'm not clear on.
There's some huge penalty.
There's a big.
They're gonna have to pay.
There's a big fine.
Yeah,
for it, basically.
I mean, we could be here this time next year,
which is bizarre
saying that
because
it's still the biggest news story.
It might be. It could still be going.
Yeah.
This time next year. It's very weird and
It's
very
so
silly.
bizarre.
There's a bunch of other stuff that probably should have been blocked if this gets blocked.
Right.
And like it feels like somebody's just trying to make an example of it.
It feels like there's some like one person who has just made it their vendetta to like make sure this deal doesn't go through.
It might be. Like you never know who's got who in what pocket.
Right.
So
yeah, all the political action committees and all this crap. Like, yeah. So who knows what's going on there? But it's undoubtedly the biggest news. We've talked about it on GameFace like 6 times this year.
It's just weird that like everybody complains that the antitrust stuff doesn't activate properly, and now it is for something that is patently not antitrust.
Really
There's no antitrust argument to this purchase. Like,
and Microsoft just keeps giving more and more concessions. Now Call of Duty for 10 years. Like, does Call of Duty even matter in 10 years? Who knows?
Probably not.
It may not. It's crazy. So anyway, undoubtedly that's the biggest news story of the year. I picked something else just so we could discuss something else. And for me, the biggest news story is Stadia and game streaming. Rest in peace. Because I do feel like with Stadia going down, it's the canary in the coal mine. This is Google with all the resources and money in the world creating a streaming platform with some of the biggest developers in the world allegedly helming games. If this didn't work, it's never going to work. And so to me, Google Stadia going under was the bigger story is that game streaming people aren't ready for game streaming. That's what this says. And so you have Amazon Luna and GeForce Now. They all had like these little brief glimpses of hope and opportunity, and I feel like they're gone now. So I wouldn't be surprised if like the technology that's been developed for game streaming ends up being incorporated into TVs and stuff like that, and it's not really taken seriously. It is seriously like the casual player's only way that they play games eventually. But for our purposes, for being hardcore gamers, people who really love games, it's over. So we're never going to have...
It was over before it started.
It kind of was, but we're never going to have...
If they'd invited me to the meetings, this would never happen.
The consulting firm. Hire us. So it's
we will save you millions of dollars.
Yeah, seriously, billions in this case.
Did they spend billions on this?
Google?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. On Stadia? Yep, absolutely. Think about just like the salaries that they paid.
I hope Jade got paid.
Oh, she did. You know she did. That's the only good thing that came out of this.
Yeah.
She got way overpaid probably. But this is the end. This is the end of game streaming as something that we discuss. It's something may or may not seem viable for us. That's settled now. It's a big deal because this was a big thrust, not just for Google, but for other gigantic corporations with lots of resources who could have potentially just tried to use blunt force trauma to push this idea through the channels, and that is not going to happen now.
Solutions in search of problems rarely find a place to land.
Yep, it's absolutely true, and this was one of them. And game streaming, Google Stadia, rest in peace. Don't let the door hit you, where the good Lord split you.
Don't rest in peace. Rest in torment. Die screaming.
Don't go away sad. Just go away.
Go away. I don't have it. No mercy for the streaming game thing. That's a terrible, terrible idea.
Yep. So anyway, it is now dust in the wind thanks to Google Stadia. My biggest news story.
Especially if you want $60 from it. That was the bit. At least they refunded everything.
Yep, they did. I mean, they did do right by people in the end, but it was just a terrible idea, horribly executed.
But they could have absolutely been within their TOS and their rights to just be like, oh,
sorry,
too bad.
You knew what you were signing up for.
You knew what this was.
Well, I mean, we did tell you guys.
You were buying nothing.
I mean, we did tell people, like, don't buy anything on Stadia because it could just go poof.
Yep.
And you're lucky if you did that they refunded the money. So, all right, there you go. Biggest news story.
It's better than the people bought NFTs got.
Yep. Next up, worst game. Now, I say this every year, but I'll say it again. There are undoubtedly worse games out there. Like, this is another one of these awards where I'm like, this is not a definitive pick.
I don't know if I'm willing to concede this for mine.
There are. I think there are.
I mean, maybe if you dig into like the weird one-off porn shit that's up on Steam all the time. But like, in terms of major releases, I think I got this one.
You may have. But I want to reiterate that, like, you may have played worse games than the games that we're going to discuss. These are the worst games that Matt and I played. And Matt, what's your pick for 2022?
Fall.
Shocker. 4.0 Metacritic, as we just saw with my fantasy results, my video game fantasy league results, where this was one of my alternates. It got a 4.0 on one platform and like a 4.6 on another one for an overall aggregate of 4.3.
This is one of the lowest rated games
in recent memory
ever
from a big publisher.
In terms of a big publisher releases.
Yeah. I would argue that I think a 4 is harsh.
I would argue that a 4 is accurate. This is a terrible game. Like, there's no redeeming characteristics to this thing. I only played it for a couple hours, but that's all I wanted to spend of my finite lifespan on this planet playing this stupid game.
Well, I played it more, and a lot more, actually, and I'm not proud of it. But it is a functional game. Like, it's not broken. Like, it does what it's supposed to do. It has terrible graphics, and it doesn't do anything innovative. And I would argue that this trailer is a big pile of horse shit.
Yeah, the trailer is...
the most misleading thing ever.
You can, in fact, do the things that are in this, but you will not be doing them very often.
Yeah, like never. Like once the whole time you play the game. But the game is not broken. Like, it functions the way it's supposed to. It doesn't have bugs. Like,
it's just a bad idea. It's a collection of horrible ideas.
Yeah.
Done horribly.
Executed badly, yes. That's a good way to put it. And for those of you wondering, it was supposed to be a game as a service that lived on and on. They had already finished the first season of DLC before the game release, so they still put out that first season, but then very quickly Square Enix killed it.
It's shut down now.
It's shut down now, yeah. Yep, so it is R.I.P.
Rumor is Avengers is going away in March.
Really? That actually has lasted longer than I thought.
Yeah, that sold pretty well, really, from the outset. It was not an
I thought it might die a lot quicker than it has. So yeah, I don't think
Anthem.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I don't think anyone's going to argue with you over a Babylon's Fall. It's a bad game. There's no doubt about it. But there's another game, and maybe it wasn't that I felt like this was as bad, but it was so bad that it pissed me off way more. and that is Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. This game angered me because it's like you've been making Pokemon games for how many freaking years, and you put out a turd like this after like 20 entries? Like, it just boggles the mind. Like, and look, I'm not even just mad at Game Freak for making a bad game. I'm mad at Nintendo for allowing this game to be released, particularly when they already had a Pokemon game for this year. There was no reason to release this if it was in the crappy state that it was in. None. And this game does have some stuff that's broken in it. It does have horrible graphics. It does run at a slog in its dodgy frame rates. It does have a terrible story. It does have a bunch of Pokemon that I don't care about. The changes that it did make, I don't like or agree with. Like, the only thing that that game has redeeming about it is what it learned from Arceus, which is its open world. And I do think that that's the way forward for Pokemon. Everything else about this game, I did not like. It is the least I have played a Pokemon game ever, Matt. I have played every Pokemon game ever released, every mainline. This is the one I have played the least as far as the number of hours. I got done playing this for GameFace. I think I played another 2 hours of it, and I have not gone back. And I do not miss it, and I don't think I will go back.
I've definitely played this more than I played Sword.
More than Sword and Shield?
What was the last one?
Sword and Shield.
Yeah, Sword I played the least.
Wow. I'm surprised to hear that.
Not for any
I finished it.
Negative thing about it.
I finished like every Pokemon game, except for this one.
So here's the thing about this. The funny thing about this game is, like, the people, I know people who have it, especially younger people who grew up with Pokemon. Almost universally, their reaction to this has been they love everything about what it's doing and what it's trying to do, but they dislike how technically broken it is. Like, it's basically like, I've heard multiple times from unrelated people, if this game worked right and ran well, if it was like on hardware that could handle it and was finished, you know,
it didn't look like ass.
Like, this would be like my favorite Pokemon.
Really?
Period.
Why?
Like, I don't know.
The story is so terrible. There hardly is one.
The story is just Pokemon, though. There's never the only Black and White has had a story that actually stuck.
It's
in
the
my
only
head
good
at all.
one.
Yeah.
But they've never been as bad as this. I mean, I don't even know that there is a story. It's hard for me to even, like, say what is the plot in this game.
I don't know. I couldn't tell you the plot of any Pokemon game outside of the first one.
Well, they all have, like, some little theme that goes along with them.
Right, and this one you're just sort of...
But this one doesn't.
Well, that's because they pick 3 and kind of you can go do whatever plot line. I don't know. I think it's very hard to get into it because it's so choppy and broken and technically a mess. But, like, I do like what they're trying to go for in terms of sort of being a halfway point between Arceus and this. Like, I think the open world is pretty compelling in terms of, like, the idea. I don't think it gets there.
I mean, I agree with you. That's the one thing I said. I'm like, the open world is the way forward. They need to make these games open world going forward.
I mean, they're tech and baby stuff. I mean, again, the big issue I have with this game is I did like it okay, but the performance and technical issues just kind of stopped me from bothering with it after a certain point. That's why I stopped this one. I stopped.
Yeah, I feel like your tune has changed since we talked about it on GameFace.
I stopped playing Sword and Shield because I just felt I'd done everything in Pokemon again. This made me feel like there was stuff. I didn't feel like I was repeating the same Pokemon formula again, exactly the way I already had 5 or 6 times. It just wasn't very fun to play after a while because the flaws just kept kind of magnifying until you just couldn't ignore them anymore.
Yeah.
If there was a way to, that's the thing is like, and like I didn't even have the hope that it would get patched up and be fun better later because I don't think you can. I don't think Game Freak can do that any better than It's like maybe if the next
it would have been fixed already.
Yeah, and if like the next Switch is backwards compatible, maybe just the extra power boost would help. But like, I don't know. I think a lot of that is just inherently in that game.
Yeah.
The way it was built, quote unquote.
It's their engine.
Yeah, like there needs to be some kind of come to Jesus thing with how the Pokemon Company does these things because it's just not up. The thing is, as you say, it's not up to Nintendo's standards. Like, even the smallest, weirdest one-off Nintendo game doesn't
way more
come out like
it doesn't
that.
look like this. It doesn't run like that. It doesn't look like that. Yeah.
No, it's just like and it's not there's games where that Kirby game could have totally been half-assed and no one would have really cared except the Kirby fans, and there's not enough of them to really matter. But it isn't.
But it's not. Yeah.
It's not. It's to a fine sheen, and the Pokemon games just aren't. And I know that that's because Nintendo doesn't technically make them, but everyone in the fucking world thinks
that it
Pokemon
does.
is a Nintendo game.
Yeah, they do.
And of course, the other issue...
It's its name on the line.
And
Here.
of
It's
course
not
the other-
Game Freak or
Right.
Pokemon Company.
And of course,
Yeah.
the other irritating thing about this one is that I do like a lot of the new things in it and new ideas and where they're trying to take it, but they're all things that should have happened on, like, the Wii.
Yeah.
They're all things that are 15 years
They
behind.
drag their feet forever.
Yeah. And part of that was because they were on handheld, but part of that is because they were afraid to leave handhelds for
Yeah.
so long. It was like,
Yep.
you know, and there's an argument to
Cash
be made
cow.
that maybe this is the first time it's made sense because the Switch is a handheld as well as a console.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, it feels so day late and dollar short, especially in comparison to things like Temtem and...
To me, it just feels bad.
What's the other
It's
one?
just a bad game.
What's the other one that's not out yet?
Oh, Doki.
Doka X or
Yeah.
that
I know
other,
what you're
the other
talking
Korean thing that looks like super high definition 4K Pokemon.
Yeah.
Like that looks.
Yeah, there are
frickin'
other
awesome.
developers
I've
making
shown that
better
trailer.
games.
I've shown that trailer to a bunch of my Pokemon fan friends, and they're like, "Oh my god, that looks like the greatest thing ever." I'm
Yeah.
like, "Yeah, because it looks like what Pokemon should look like."
Should look
now.
like in
It's like
2022. Yep. Okay. Let's move on. Next category.
Doke V. That's it.
Dokev. Yep. Next category, game we didn't get. This is a game that other people either seem to like or hate, but we feel differently about it, and we can't understand why people feel that way. Matt, what is the game that you did not get?
I don't know how many people did get this necessarily, but this is the one when I see people praising it as kind of at the end of the year, like, what did you like thing?
Yeah.
I just go, what's wrong with you?
Oh, I've seen people praising this game.
And that is Stranger of Paradise Final Fantasy Origin, which is maybe the dumbest thing I played this year.
I've seen lots of people in the last month just around the internet and social media, like in hindsight, saying, "You know what? Now actually, that's one of my favorite games of the year." It's
Yeah, that's you're mostly just saying something about 2022 at that point.
yeah.
This was in contention for worst game I played this, but it's just I mean,
Why?
balance.
My question is, why does this game exist?
Yeah. Absolutely.
There's no redeeming qualities in it. There's nothing. The plot doesn't matter to anything else. It's
No.
kind of rehashing an old plot.
It doesn't do anything it does better than the other games that do the same things.
No, there's no reason for this game to exist.
I don't get it. Yeah, I just
It was didn't Team Ninja got a contract for
I guess
18 months. That's why it exists.
This is the shit where I'm just I mean, stuff like this is part of why you're like, oh my god, I want a new Ninja Gaiden. I'm like, you want a new Ninja Gaiden when this is what they fucking make?
Well,
now?
I don't think Team Ninja poured their heart and soul into this. I
Maybe
think
not,
this was
but,
a quick buck for them from
come
Square
on,
Enix.
what a disaster.
Yeah, I mean, I don't get it either. And now that I see people in hindsight being like, actually, it wasn't that bad. No, it was that bad.
It was that bad.
It was definitely that bad. It may be worse, honestly, because it came out during a dry period, so we probably gave it a little bit more of benefit of the doubt than maybe we should have. We are human after all. I mean, look, we did rail it. Let's be honest, but we probably could have dug into it even harder than we did when we talked about it on.
It also
GameFace.
and part of this was because I watched this 7.5 hour retrospective on Castlevania. In hindsight, I didn't think of it at the time, I don't think, but it does kind of remind me of the bad 3D Castlevania games. It reminds me of Lament of Innocence, where it's
That's
just
a
like,
good way.
why are you doing this to me? Why
I
is
understood
this
why
a
they
thing?
did it, because Castlevania.
Right, because you want money from you think that's what you
Yeah.
need to do now, but it's like at that same
It's
element
like
of
this. They tacked on Final Fantasy at the
you're
end.
like, why did you... Like, I understand if you pitch me the baseline, like what this is, why you think that's maybe a good idea. Like an action-driven game where we retell the story of Final Fantasy 1.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, sure.
That sounds decent on
But-
paper.
What? Why? And all the chaos shit?
It's so dumb.
that just kept making me think of the thing in Lament of Innocence where the vampire is all like, I am beloved by the night, and the guy you're playing is like, I'll kill you and the night. And I'm like, what are you talking about? What does that even fucking mean?
That's a great line, though. We remember it all these years later.
So yeah, this is good for future chaos running gags, but that's about all I mean, we talked about it earlier in the week on the Final Fantasy 16 thing, but nothing. This game more than anything else really drives home how thrilled I am that Final Fantasy 16 is just doing fantasy shit and is not doing this weird ass. Why are they fighting in a fucking spaceship? A dragon in and then they go back to like this medieval town. Like, what are you doing?
Remember the scenes in the town where you walk in and like all the kids are like running up to you? It's so crazy.
I guess I get that some people like that dichotomy or that kind of dissonance that creates, but I've always thought that was stupid.
No, it's stupid and terrible, man.
Like the closest. Like as far as I go is in like Final Fantasy VI, where like there's the Magitech thing where you have like the airships and the things powered by crystals. We're like, that's cool. But like I have never understood the weird sci-fi mixed with thing like the.
That's why I'm hyped for Final Fantasy 16 because it's going back to fantasy.
Yeah, like the fact that
get rid of all this dumb
weird,
crap.
Like, no one's running around in cyborg gear and shit. Like awesome.
I hear you. Yep.
There is one fantasy RPG series that I like that mix in, and it's called Phantasy Star, and they don't do it anymore except in that online service game that I don't play.
Yep.
Blech.
Yep. Agreed. Yeah, I don't get it either. I don't get why anyone would like that game. My choice for game we didn't get. Probably not going to be too surprised by this if you guys know me pretty well, and that is Elden Ring. It's a From Software game, and I will never get them. I will never understand why people enjoy being frustrated and beating their head against the wall. Again, this game I played way longer than any other From Software game. Still at 20 hours after I had done the stream, and the stream had kind of run its course, and you guys had lost your curiosity and me getting my ass beat over and over by this game, and you guys stopped watching the streams. I was done. I had no interest in continuing to play it at all, other than I regret that I didn't get to see as much of the game as I would have liked to have. Like, I wish I had seen another 20 bosses in this game than I did. But what I found was that I just ended up watching...
Most of them are the bosses you already fought.
No, you're right. They do recycle them a lot. But look, I will always remember this game for Shane versus Elden Ring, like the time that I spent with you guys on the stream, with you guys helping me in the communal part of that. But the actual game itself, like, I don't get it. I'll never get why people enjoy playing From Software's games. I just won't. Like, I've been doing this a long time, and, like, there's not going to be a day where, like, a switch flips inside my brain, and I'm like, I get it. I know why you guys want to play these games now. I just don't. So, I don't begrudge you guys, and different strokes for different folks, but this is definitely a different stroke for this folk. I just do not like From Software's games, and it's okay. Like, it wouldn't bother me that much if I didn't like so much about their games. I've said this before. I love their flipping art. I love their creature design. I love everything about their games except for the difficulty. So, again, like, I didn't get it. I have a feeling that there's probably a couple million other people in the United States that feel the same exact way. They're like, wait a minute. Like, why do people love this stuff so much?
Not everyone who bought this game could possibly have loved it.
No, definitely not. So, as I said earlier in the show, it'll be interesting to see how Elden Ring 2 does, if a lot of the people who lined up for this line up again. And I will play it again, obviously, because I have to, because it's my job. But would I do it just to enjoy myself and have fun? Hell to the no. So, to me, game I didn't get, Elden Ring. Next up, best platform. This is where we pick what the best console, PC, handheld, whatever was for the year. This tends to change every year. Like, I can't remember, PS4 won it 2 years in a row.
Yeah, like once the Pro came out, I think that was it. I think 1 year I gave it a PC.
Yep. We gave it to Switch 1 year in there too. But this award tends to fluctuate because it's just natural with the cycle of the industry. Like, it just, the way it works out, a lot of platform holders tend to have like a big rash of big exclusives, and then it's kind of thin. PlayStation, the worst for this. It will have a banner year that blows your doors off, and then you get a year like this one where there's like nothing. So it fluctuates, and so our awards for this tend to fluctuate. Matt, what was your pick for the best platform of 2022?
The thing I played the most, which was the Xbox Series X.
And I'm guessing this was most to do with Game Pass?
Partly Game Pass, and partly just because most stuff seems to perform better and have room to install versus the PS5.
Yeah.
And I just played most stuff on it. Like, that was the thing I turned on every day to play a game. If I'm going to sit down and play something and decide what I'm going to play, and I don't have a specific game in mind, I'm going to turn that on. That might have been different if my PC had been more up to date these days.
Yep.
But it wasn't. So I didn't feel like, I wasn't getting really much better performance out of my old PC than I would from a console, and I I tend to pick the couch.
Yeah.
So yeah, the Xbox was just what obviously there were no exclusives to speak of that were of any interest or use.
I mean, it's about Game Pass, right?
Yeah, largely, but it's also about being the best hardware to play multi-platform stuff on.
Yeah. Because this was a year for multi-platform, for sure.
Yeah. There wasn't, and obviously PlayStation 5.
Xbox had no exclusives. PlayStation had no exclusives.
Yeah, it did.
Not really.
Horizon.
Yeah.
And
it had one at the beginning of the year and one at the end.
Yeah, but that's about all you can ask these days.
That's all you can ask for PlayStation. But I'm about to tell you about another platform that had like 12, so...
Yeah, but you're going to have to give me one that has exclusives I care about.
Okay.
Which Nintendo doesn't have most of the time.
Okay, well, you just ruined my pick, so we'll just move right along to my pick. And my pick is the Nintendo Switch. It destroyed this year. I have no idea what you're talking about. Splatoon 3.
Don't care.
2 huge Pokemon games. Let me just finish. Kirby and the Forgotten Land, Bayonetta 3, Mario Plus Rabbids, Xenoblade Chronicles 3, Switch Sports, Harvestella, Dragon Quest Treasures.
Harvestella wasn't exclusive.
Yeah, it is.
I almost bought that on Xbox, I thought.
No, Return to Monkey Island, console exclusive for Switch. I can't read. Oh, Fire Emblem Warriors.
That was good.
Live Alive. All Switch exclusives.
That was on Windows. That's where I almost got it.
It was a gigantic year for Switch.
There are, I think, 3 games in that list I cared about. So.
Really?
Yeah, I like Fire Emblem.
There's 2 Pokemon games alone.
They didn't set my world on fire there. I mean, Arceus was fine, but like the 3 games, there are 3 games in there. I maybe 4. I can't remember. But I liked the Fire Emblem game a lot. I liked Mario Rabbids Switch, and there was another one you listed I liked. Oh, Xenoblade. Those are great. The rest,
those are a lot compared to 0 or 2.
3 is more than 2, I guess. Yeah. Okay.
I don't know. I think I'm shocked.
I didn't like any of those games.
Switch is the best platform of 2022, man. Like, there's no denying.
Only if you care about the games.
They put out like 12 exclusives, and no one else has more than 2.
But I don't care about any of them except 3 of them, so it doesn't do me any good.
Okay, I think you're completely wrong on this one.
I'm not, because I like
Switch had a great year. It should be platform of the year.
It's not, because I didn't like it very much. Like, are we just doing it because it's a business proposition for Nintendo? Like, sure, then they have.
No, it's output. I
don't care about output if I don't like the output. What if they just put out variants of the new Pokemon game all year and they had 14 of them? That would be.
But they don't, and they didn't. They put out great games.
They put out 3 great games and a bunch of shit I don't want to play. So,
okay,
not my platform of the year. Useless exclusive. It's like if both Sony exclusives have been Days Gone 2 and 3, I would not be praising those exclusives.
Well, the other thing I would say, too, though, is that beyond the exclusives, there was also a pretty good year for third-party on Switch, because there was a lot of games that came out for Switch this year that I never dreamed would be on Switch. And not even just like cloud versions, like versions that run natively on the Switch. So even third-party, it was better than usual for Switch, like The Witcher 3.
Okay, but the worst version of Witcher 3, which I already had from 7 years ago.
Yeah, it's still The Witcher 3. It's still a third-party game.
It doesn't do me any good, though. I'm picking my favorite platform, the platform I use the most and worked the best for me this year, and I barely turn the Switch on except to play the odd exclusive that I think is worthwhile. Or to sometimes look at whatever they add to the retro online thing, even though...
Oh, that's the other thing, too. We didn't even get into that. Like, all the virtual console stuff, all the N64 stuff, all the Sega Genesis stuff.
Well, I don't play any of that because I refuse to give them extra money for that because it's not worth it.
Oh, you don't pay for Nintendo Online?
I pay for Nintendo Online. I don't pay for the extra thing on that lets you access the N64 and Mega Drive stuff.
Oh.
That's bullshit.
I don't know. To me, Switch won it in a landslide. Like, it's not even... It's like Switch, and then the other 2, like, I can't even see them. Like, it's not even in, like, the same stratosphere. So
that's fun. I would never, ever have considered Switch for this category.
Well, you hate the Switch. Let's just be honest. You hate the Switch. I mean, in 7 years of doing this show, however long the Switch has been around, it's become obvious that you hate the Switch.
Yeah. I don't hate all the games on it, but
most of them...
A lot of them, yeah.
Like, I can't remember the last Switch game you really liked.
Xenoblade Chronicles 3.
Did you really like that?
Yeah,
you didn't gush over it on GameFace.
No, because it's not as good as 1. But I don't think they'll ever make a game in that series as good as 1.
Yeah.
And Mario Rabbids I really liked, but like, yeah, like it's just, Nintendo's output is very limited to me, in a lot of ways in that regard. And sometimes even the thing I think I am going to love that comes out, like Metroid Dread, I don't love.
Yeah,
like
I mean, I agree with that as well.
We'll see how Zelda turns out. Like, God knows. Like, at this point, I'm really sort of just crawling my way from Zelda and Mario game to Zelda and Mario game with them.
That's crazy. You're really missing out on a lot of great stuff.
I played almost everything you listed. I just didn't like much of it.
Yeah.
I don't like it. Like, I don't think they're very good, and I think they're held back by the garbage hardware. Maybe when the new system comes out, like, that'll remedy some of that. But I think it feels like playing ancient shit to me. Like, so much of it is so held back by that. It's frustrating. I find the Switch frustrating more than anything else.
Yeah. I mean, that's no secret. I don't begrudge the Switch at all. Like, I'm not, like, gaga over it. Like, I don't really play the handheld side of it that much. I just think they had a ton of great games this year, way more than anyone else. And to me, it's all about the games.
I mean, I agree that they had a ton of games. I just don't think they were great, except for 2.
Wow.
Plus 1. Plus
two,
one that
two
was pretty good.
Pokemon games, Xenoblade Chronicles 3, Bayonetta 3,
I hated
Kirby.
Bayonetta 3. Why would you list Bayonetta 3 at me in this argument?
No, I'm just... Because it's got an 86 Metacritic. And you may not like it, but you still have to respect the fact that a lot of other people do.
No, I don't.
I'm not saying you have to pick the Switch, but you're very dismissive of it. You're not respecting that other people like stuff differently from you, and therefore maybe the Switch had a great year, just not for you.
I never argued otherwise.
Okay. Anyway, let's move on. For me, best platform Switch, not even close, by like 50,000 miles. Next up, best graphics. And this is where we start to have runners up for each category. So we're almost done, actually. We only have like four more categories left. And we have runners up and winners for each of those going forward. So this is where we get to kind of the big boys, the ones that we really want to accentuate. Best graphics. 2 years into these next-gen platforms, what really blew your doors off, Matt?
Well, another potential candidate for most disappointing game, but it didn't make it. But A Plague Tale Requiem is gorgeous.
Yeah. There's no denying this is one of the prettiest games of the year.
Yeah, the one area it did not disappoint in was the visuals.
Well, that was the one element of the game that we were both unanimous on that we both thought was gobsmacking, was the visuals.
Yeah.
This was next gen only, by the way.
Yeah.
And it makes a big difference. Yeah.
You can tell from the opening shot.
Yep.
You can tell.
Yeah. It's stunning. Like, just moment after moment. I've never seen better video game water than the water in this game.
Yeah. Water and, honestly, foliage.
Yeah.
Like, the foliage, and they know it because they keep panning the fucking camera through the trees.
Even these villages, too, though. Just how alive everything is.
All of it. There's a density to it that is really impressive. Like, this is one of those things where, this is one of those things you could show this to me in like 1989 and I'd like die.
I'd die. Yeah, my brain would just turn to mush and ooze out my ears.
Like the idea that games look like this now. Like, even though I didn't like this very much, which was a disappointment because I did like the first one a lot. Like, what the hell? Like, every shot in this is...
This is another game I may go back and try to play a little more of.
I could try it again.
I feel like I've had like several people who I really respect say you need to stick with it. And I did play a good bit of it, to be fair, but...
I hate that. I hate the whole, like,
then it's not a great game.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
if it doesn't hold me and suck me in, then it's not a great game.
It's the old adage. It's like the most important sentence in a book is the first one.
Yeah.
Like, you either hook someone on that first page or you don't, and you failed. Like, and this game doesn't. It doesn't do it. It starts quiet, and you can start quiet, but like the first real complications to the plot make the characters act like idiots, and you lost me. Yeah. Especially because they don't do that in the first game.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a step back narratively in a lot of ways, which is a shame because they tried some new gameplay ideas. I don't think super worked, but like, and visually, like,
I don't think it worked. A lot of the gameplay tweaks worked at all.
No, it just I mean, maybe it's like a more of a choice I didn't agree with. I could go with that, but I don't think it worked.
But it is beautiful. There's no denying that. It is a gorgeous game. Definitely worthy of your runner-up for best graphics. My runner-up is Elden Ring. Not for its technical prowess, although it's not terrible. It's for the art, and something that I have always respected from Software, and why it drives me crazy that I can't play their games for longer than I can, because I want to experience the worlds that they build, the creatures that they create, the bosses that they forge. I love everything about From Software's art and visual design. It's amazing. And this game is probably the best of everything that they've done. Like, just look at that
It's
shot
definitely
right there.
everything they've learned all packed into one game.
And this is graphics. So this is, I'm talking about the visuals in the game. And From Software's art is just, even in Armored Core 6, you think mechs, which are just they're just steel, but there's a style to it. I don't even know how to put it in words.
Armored Core mechs do look like Armored Core mechs in a weird way that's hard to describe.
Yeah. It's just, look, that dragon, like, the art in this game is just exceptional, and I will admit and cop to the fact that usually every year when we do these awards, I pick one game for the art and then another game that I feel like does everything very well. And for this year, this game is the art. Even just the skyboxes in this game are astounding. Everything in this game looks amazing. Now, would it have looked better if it had been built for just PS5 and Xbox Series? Probably. But that's for Elden Ring 2. So, and they built this game pretty quickly, too. From Software doesn't mess around. It's pretty amazing, their output. Especially when you play this game and you realize how big it is and how much stuff there is in the game.
There's a lot in there.
It's a lot, and it all looks incredible. So, my honorable mention for best graphics for 2022, Elden Ring.
Definitely on my list, but I was kind of going for like most impressive usage of things, and I guess
your pick's not wrong.
I guess my pick for the top pick, the winner pick, is more of the art over the tech.
Yeah,
Plague Tale was the tech pick.
Yep. And what is your second pick? Your winner for best graphics?
Winner pick is Horizon Forbidden West.
Yeah,
which is again maybe not on the level of Plague Tale in terms of like sheer technical stuff. But in terms of taking that art style, taking the look, and I mean, this is a Ghost of Tsushima thing for me. This is both
our picks, by the way. This is our unanimous winner.
No other game took the use of art and color and place and everything. It just comes together in a way above and beyond every other game I played this year.
We both chose Horizon Forbidden West for best graphics of 2020.
Yeah, nothing else made me just stop and look
all the time
as often as this
all
game.
The time, even out in the open world, when you're out in these just huge vistas, and it's just stunning. And then you have the hardware power so that everything's being drawn and rendered, so stuff's not popping in all the time. And then you go underwater. Like, there were so many moments in this game that I remember just for the visuals. Like the turtle, when the turtle comes up out of the swamp, like some of the stuff they spoiled in some of the early trailers for this. But the creatures, like the detail on the creatures in this game, it's just amazing. Like,
and you look at like some of the bigger creatures that are like pushing more polygons on their legs than in like entire PS3 games.
Yeah,
and it's
like, amazing. Yep. So from both a technical and an artistic perspective, to me, easily the best graphics. And people may be sitting there now saying, "What about God of War?" Like, God of War cheats a little bit to me. It's not a true open world, and I would argue that even though it's not a true open world, it doesn't look better than this game.
No, and I also don't think it pushes, even though they're both, cross-gen games, I don't think God of War pushes the way this does.
Me either. Look at the light coming through the trees right there.
Certainly versus the previous game.
Yeah.
This is you play this and you're like, "Oh my god, this is such a different way of looking than the previous game." Like it's a whole
Look at that.
Another level. You're constantly looking at things in this game. You're like, this would never have been in the first game.
No, yeah.
They wouldn't have been able to do it in the first game.
Yeah.
Even though this does run on the PS4, they still found a way.
Which is like witchcraft, by the way.
Yeah. Well, some of that, I think some of that is Kojima. I think some of that is what they learned working with him on Death Stranding. Because it's the same engine.
Yeah.
Like
Decima. Yeah.
There's definitely some give and take on that.
It's not even just the creatures. Look at the detail in the foliage and just everything. It's stunning.
Whereas God of War looks good, but it looks like God of War.
Yeah. Agreed. It doesn't look that much better than God of War from 2018 running on a PS4 Pro, honestly.
Yeah, it does the job.
Yeah.
It's got some nice stuff.
It's not a bad-looking game, but it can't hang.
It'd be in the top 5, probably.
It can't hang with this.
It's not on the level of this.
So
just the design of these creatures, like the fact that you can throw those different versions of that same creature. I mean, I know which one is working for the humans because of the decorations and the paint on them versus it's like the way the world is built and the way you can just tell what you're looking at. Yeah. And you don't even necessarily need the video gamey signs to tell you where you need to go or what to climb up things or what things are. Like that stuff's there and it's there if you need it and it's there as part of like kind of the user interface. But like you could play a non-HUD version of this game. Yeah. Just because the art is so strong and the environments are so strong.
There's a little bit of Uncanny Valley going on with the humans
here and there,
but still, like that's nitpicking.
But also again, giant step up.
Oh yeah, the facial animation and everything is like a leap
Considering
forward.
the first one, we're like, their lips don't really move, do they? And
Yeah.
this one, it's like, well, their eyebrows might not be right raising, and it's a totally different thing.
Yep.
And just the level of character, like facial animation and expressions, mostly the characters other than Aloy. Aloy is kind of stone faces or whatever.
Yeah.
A lot of this, although I think that's in character for her.
Yeah.
Really good people of color in this.
Yeah,
like
that's a good point.
Some of the best like non-white faces you're ever gonna see. Like they did a
Skin
huge amount
tone,
of work.
great lighting
Skin
helps with
tone,
that. Yeah.
Facial structure, like making everybody look like different individual people. Like it's very, very impressive, just top to bottom.
Yeah.
Water's not as good as Plague Tale, but
But still, it looks amazing.
Still, it looks
you
great.
go underwater.
Yeah,
and
underwater is the whole thing. Look at those things swimming like the.
Yeah.
It's so
crazy.
good.
Yep, it's great. Okay, we got to move on. Next, most innovative game. In this category, it feels like it gets harder and harder every year to find, because this is another category where we have a runner-up and a winner, and it's becoming more difficult to find two picks, I think, every year. What's your first pick? What's your runner-up for most innovative?
My first pick might raise an eyebrow or two, but it is The Last of Us Part 1.
I don't think it will at all.
Specifically for its accessibility options.
Yep. By the way, we should mention that Mitch, who used to work with us here on SIFTD, he now works at Naughty Dog, and this is what he does. He worked on accessibility for this. Mm-hmm. So, and they win a...
They did win a game award for that.
Yeah.
For innovation, I think, something like that.
Or no, it was for accessibility.
For accessibility. Yeah, it was accessibility. Yeah, that's right.
That's their new award for this year.
Yeah.
And this won for it.
Yeah, and Sony's stuff has been moving very well toward, Last of Us Part 2 had good accessibility options, God of War has good accessibility options, Horizon had good accessibility. This is next level.
Yep.
The stuff in this is just astounding. And so is God of War. God of War has a lot of great stuff.
I think they worked together.
I think they did.
Yeah.
But this is just, especially in comparison to the previous versions of this game, like it's astounding.
Yeah.
And it's not even just the implementation being good, but how much they thought of. I don't know how many people.
It's the opposite of Elden Ring.
Right. Like how many people must they consulted with and organizations they talked to, and just sit down and think about what are the possible ways you might have trouble interacting with the game given whatever disability you might have, and it's hard to think of something they don't cover except maybe blindness.
It's really
there's not a whole lot you can do about that. But even then,
they have sound mixing tools. So if you do try to, because there are people blind who play games, they use sound audio cues, and you can tweak everything in this game, the audio cues, to make them louder if you need them to be. So even blind people, I would argue, this game does a great job.
They did the best they could there. Yeah,
exactly.
So I think this is the way going forward. I think this is what games should be.
I think every game's going to,
as long as if you have the budget for it, and I think most AAA games do, I think this should all be standard.
Agreed.
Going forward.
Yep, they did a great job.
And I think Naughty Dog, and particularly this game, is doing a great job showing the way.
Yep.
Like if you want your game to be as narratively and visually as engaging and compelling and comparable to Last of Us and Last of Us Part 2, you should also want your game to be comparable in the accessibility options.
Agreed. I think every studio eventually, when they can afford it, will have somebody that their specialty is working on accessibility for them.
Yeah, the big companies should have teams that are
maybe Mitch can become that guy. That would be awesome. My runner-up for most innovative is Pentiment. And I did not even like Pentiment as much as you did, or honestly as much as everybody else did, because some people are giving this game perfect 10s. I enjoyed it.
Look, I like this game. This was one of my considerations for games we didn't get.
Really?
Because I do like this game
I thought about it too.
I do like this game a lot.
I'm surprised that you would.
I don't quite understand why it got the reception it did.
Me either. I even went back and played more of it after the show to see if I was missing something, and I was like, no, I get it.
There's a lot of nice little touches, a little innovation. The writing's good, and the story is very interesting to me. I mean, I know you weren't super engaged by the bunch of people doing illuminated manuscripts and talking about who they're going to have dinner with tonight. Yeah. But it gets more interesting once the guy dies.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
But I am a little mystified as to why this thing has been.
It's really weird. It is weird.
It's just like, okay.
But look, we're supposed to be talking positive about it right now. And it is innovative in the way that it does the storytelling. And I have a feeling that, the adventure genre, which I feel like is resurgent this year, will take a lot of the cues from this game and maybe not incorporate them into like 14th century crazy crap and just make a normal adventure game using a lot of the tenets and the ideas from Pentiment. So while I didn't enjoy Pentiment all that much, that doesn't mean that I can't recognize that it does some things that adventure games have not done and some things that can be extrapolated out into the genre going forward. So I do think...
it's cool that a lot of those things are not things that are tied specifically to the art style.
Right.
Like, you could have just leaned back and said, like, we made it look like a tapestry, an illuminated manuscript, and we're done.
We're good,
otherwise, it's just a standard game.
Yep. But they didn't. They really took storytelling and forming your own story. I know that's a hilarious scene. To a different level with this game. And so I feel like it's worthy of being recognized as being one of the more innovative products of 2022.
And somewhere in Obsidian, that has to be up on someone's desk as like the dev team. With everybody's names on it.
And it just loops like over and over. It's like the first screen you walk into the office every day or whatever. Yep. Okay, we got to pick our winners now for most innovative. Matt, what's your pick?
Mine was Tunic.
That's a good pick.
Which is also in my running, I think, for best indie game. But I've played a lot of Zelda-style games, like these three-quarter view action adventure games. They've been in existence since Zelda came out, and everybody started ripping it off.
Yep.
And I didn't have a lot of expectations on this one. It just kind of looked cute, and I was like, oh, I'll try this. I was really blown away by how the presentation on this was very different, and the way it uses, like, you're collecting pages of a manual a video game manual that emulates basically how old Famicom instruction manuals looked in Japan. And there's a nice nostalgia hit to that, but it's collecting those pages that clue you in as to what you need to do and tell you how to do some of the basic gameplay abilities, but also like where you need to go and what your goal should be. And
it tells you how to do what you're supposed to be doing without telling you what you're supposed to be doing.
There is no text in it.
I know, it's really crazy.
It's all in another language, in this like made-up language, and you just have to kind of piece it together through context clues and all that, and it all works.
It does,
I don't, there's a lot of games that have kind of minimal interface and a lot of minimal kind of explanations of things, but I don't think I've ever seen one do anything as elegantly as this while...
No instructions.
While breaking the fourth wall with those instructions. Because that's the thing is, like, a lot of the games that do that are just like, oh, we're just going to not have a HUD and you're going to be in the world and you have to piece things together in the world. Yeah, this doesn't do that. This knows it's a video game and is being a video game. It's just being a video game in a way I've never seen a video game be a video game.
Yeah.
And it's really cool.
Yep.
So I got to give it props for that.
I think it deserves it. I think it's a good pick. My pick for the most innovative of 2022 is Stray. It's such a simple concept, playing as a pet, playing as an animal. Why aren't there more games where we do that? And not only do they do that, they do it very, very well, and they nail it. I tried to think back to games that I have played in the past where I played as an animal as the main protagonist, and I really struggled to come up with any. There was like Animal Leader, which was that crazy GameCube game where you just basically played as an animal and you just went around and attacked other animals. Tokyo Jungle, I think, is one of them.
Yep, that was the PlayStation 3.
Yeah, but that's like it. And none of them are like this, where you personify this animal that you play as that same animal throughout the entire course of the game. And there's a narrative. The Dog's Life, is it play like that?
Yeah, you play as the dog. It's like a first-person thing.
There's the Goose Game.
The Untitled Goose Game, which is, that's what geese are like.
But you're playing as a goose is my point. There aren't that many. So it seems like an idea that was obvious to everybody, but it wasn't. So the studio picked a unique concept for its game and then absolutely nailed it. Like, I've never played as an animal where I felt like I was playing as the animal. So that to me is...
And even it had competition this year with that Fox game.
Oh, right. That's right. What was that game called again?
Not Enclave. Began with an E. Not Enclave.
I can't remember it. I liked that game too, but that was all on like rails and like.
Yeah, it's a very different thing.
It was a very different kind of game, but you're right. You did at least play as an animal in that. And look, again, this is kind of a testament to the fact that there isn't a lot of innovation in the games industry anymore. Like, I also kind of thought about using Steam Deck, but I'm like, but they just copied the Switch, so it probably didn't deserve it. It was hard to find nominees and winners for this category, and it may be cut for next year. I hate to say it. There's just not. There's not a lot of groundbreaking stuff happening in games anymore.
Well, we'll see. Like like Starfield could be
maybe,
or it could be something we've seen 1,000 times. Like it's hard to say.
I'm kind of leaning in that direction, except it's in space or whatever. But we'll see. But it is getting tough to Endling. That was the game with the fox. Thank you, Vincent. Yeah, but it's just getting very difficult to really find truly innovative ideas. And not even just the idea that you're playing as a cat and they nail that, but having like the little thing on his back, because you can't just be a cat to make it a compelling video game. You had to figure out a way to do something with the cat to make it more than just playing as a cat. And I thought they did a brilliant job of doing that as well. So again, in a weak year of innovation in the games industry, Stray is my pick for the most innovative product or game of 2022. All right, 2 categories left, Matt. Most anticipated and game of the year. And here we are at the most anticipated game of 2023. And we both have 2 picks for this. What's your first pick, Matt?
Star Wars Jedi Survivor.
Shocker. No one would ever guess that this would be one.
It wouldn't have been.
The biggest shock is that it's not number 1.
Well, it's more of a known quantity.
Yeah.
Also, it would not have been without the most recent trailer.
Yeah.
The most recent...
The one you're seeing
now. The
now.
Game Awards trailer really built some confidence for this thing
It's
for me.
a great trailer, yeah.
It looks like it addresses a lot of the kind of... Look, the original game I like a lot, obviously, but like I played it 3 times. But like there's some jank to it, and it looks like that's not here. And they might just be picking their footage carefully,
Yeah.
But it really looks like they've addressed that sort of hard to that I've described it as like a paper thin quality where it feels you're not entirely sure his feet are stuck to the
I call
the
them
ground,
paper mache games.
Yeah.
What
Looks
strikes
great.
me about this trailer is the variety.
Yeah.
There's variety in this. Go back and think back to the trailers for the first game, and it was all just this. It was all just fighting with a lightsaber, and that was it. Now, there's all these different elements in this game that they're showing you that weren't in the last game. I'm really, really excited for this game. And this trailer does a really good job of getting you hype.
Yep.
At least for me, it did. This was right on my fringe for most anticipated game. Don't forget that the first game was our game of the year when it came out. Now, granted, it was a slow year for game releases.
It was yours. I don't think
It was mine, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't remember what year. That was 20.
That was 2019, I think it was.
19?
Yeah.
I can't remember what my pick was for that.
Yeah, I don't either. Someone will figure
Must
it
have
out.
been a great game.
Yeah. If you don't even remember what it was. Like I said, that year was a rough year for game releases, so.
Might have been Spider-Man.
Was it?
If it was 2018, it was Spider-Man.
Yeah. Okay.
Mr. Spider-Man.
Yep. So anyway, I don't think anyone's going to begrudge you for that pick, particularly since you're a big Star Wars fan. My runner-up for the most anticipated game of 2023 is the Resident Evil 4 remake. And Resident Evil 4 is one of my favorite games of all time. I'm a little nervous about this. Like, my anticipation comes with some trepidation because I feel like they could ruin like one of my favorite games ever. But I'm also completely suckered in and intrigued by what they're going to do and how they're going to change some of my favorite scenes, some of my favorite characters, just all of it. My favorite bosses. I also know Resident Evil 4 really well. I hardly ever play games over again. I have played this game like 3 times, so I know the game really well, and that also is helping me get excited to see what they're going to do with the sequel. I don't know. To me, if you're going to rework, what, in my opinion, one of the greatest games of all time, a lot of anticipation is going to come along with that, and I am just really, really hyped for this game. And the other thing, too, I will say, is that Capcom hits their release dates on these. So I'm not afraid that it's not going to come out this year. I am supremely confident that it will come out this year. And so I am really pumped for the Resident Evil 4 remake. I hope you guys are, too. It is my runner-up for most anticipated game of 2023. And Matt, it's time for you to pick your winner. What game can you not wait to play more than any other? And as it turns out, we agree on this one, and it is Starfield. Most anticipated game of 2023. I mean, do we have to say anything more than it's the Elder Scrolls in space? Mm-hmm. Not really.
No. And honestly, it does look like a little more than that.
It does. I hope it is. I mean, I hope it's really not just that. Although if it is, I'll be okay with it.
Yeah, that'd be good enough for me. It looks like it's a little beyond that, or at least there's a little bit more beyond that. And I'm interested to see what the 1,000 worlds to explore are and all that.
Yep. What are the chances that this doesn't make it this year? Yours was Sekiro, Matt, in 2019.
It may also make sense why you would pick something else.
Yep. Thanks, Vincent.
I mean, there's not nothing. There's a possibility it slips out, but I think right now it's supposedly.
I'd put it at like 25%.
I mean, right now it's slated for first half of the year.
Yeah.
And
what are the chances it gets delayed from that?
Better than average.
Yeah. I'd split that over 50-50.
I think it depends entirely on what Microsoft thinks is going to make it for holiday.
Yeah.
Like if Microsoft is confident that whatever they want to release as their big holiday game is going to make it that year, this will probably come out sooner. If they need to, I think they will push this back to November to make it their big holiday game because it makes sense.
Yeah, it's gonna sell gangbusters. Well, it won't sell that well because everyone gets it free on Game Pass, but
yeah, I mean, a lot of people will play it.
It's really interesting being in this new frontier. We have to think about things completely different. But I am really excited for it. So is Matt. So I guess we can say that's SIFTD's most anticipated game of 2023. Yeah. Okay, it's that time, people. It's time for Game of the Year for 2022. SIFTD's Game of the Year for 2022. And we also have a runner-up and a winner for this. And in this case, our runner-up is the same, and that is Horizon Forbidden West. We both chose it as our runner-up for Game of the Year in 2022. And the first thing I would say is it's the game I have spent the most time with all year. It's the game I have spent the most hours playing through this year. And that says a lot. Because the one thing about like what we do is that like we don't necessarily have to finish games. Like we're always upfront with you guys and we tell you exactly how much we've played them so you can, you know, judge accordingly our opinions. But, you know, a lot of times we play as much as we can. We come in here, we talk about them, and then we got to move on to something else because there's some other 40-hour game that we have to be ready to talk about in another 6 days. So we have to move on. This game, I never quit. I played it steady until I finished the game. And it was great from the beginning all the way to the end. Vast improvement over the first Horizon in immeasurable ways. I really enjoyed everything about this. We already talked about the graphics because it was one of our winners in best graphics. We talked about the facial animation and how the human characters are more believable in this one. We talked about the sprawling vistas and the worlds that they've built for this game, the detail in it. The story in this is great. Everything about it is just the whole package, and that's what we're looking for in Game of the Year nominees and winners.
Yep.
Anything else you want to add to it, Matt?
No, that about covers it. Its only flaw is that it came out at a bad time.
As this series always does.
Yep.
It got drowned out by Elden Ring.
Yep.
It's a shame. Like they should have delayed it a couple months. When they started seeing like the tracking on Elden Ring, probably would have been smart. People would have been pissed, but
they done it. You know, just same thing happened with Zelda.
It did.
The first one.
Zelda
so
capped the first one.
For the next one, I hope they pay more attention to that kind of thing because this game needs to stop getting buried by like open world cult classic darlings.
Yeah.
Like there's like Zelda's not cult classic, but it's like there's just no way around that. And maybe Elden Ring was harder to predict, but like,
Yep. So anyway, it's a great game. If you haven't played it yet, and I feel like there's a lot of people that haven't.
Yeah, I would say so.
I don't see a lot of chatter about people having played this on SIFTD.
No, and you don't see people talking about it too much. Again, I think it was when it came
drowned out. Yep. So again, if you're one of those people who chose Elden Ring over this game earlier in the year, play it.
Yeah, it's a good time to go back to it.
Yeah.
DLC is about to come next year.
Yeah.
So.
And worst case scenario, maybe wait for that. But
don't miss it.
Yeah, don't miss it. Play it. Make sure you play it. And with that, it's time for both of us to share our games of the year for 2022. Matt, what is your game of the year?
The game that made me stop playing Horizon too early, Elden Ring. Because otherwise I probably would have done what you did, just kept playing until I finished it.
Yeah.
But instead,
that's what happened. I was the opposite.
Yeah,
like I was turned off by Elden Ring, so I kept playing Horizon.
So I got pulled right in. So that was the end of that.
Yeah.
Like, I played Elden Ring for 200 hours, and by the time I was done with that, I tried to go back to Horizon, and then it was time to play something else, and I couldn't quite get back into Horizon in time. I've gone back to it several times and made a little bit of progress, but I've never been able to kind of just fall into the groove because something else was always coming.
Yeah, that's the bad part of what we do. You always have to keep moving on. You can't really sit and dwell on things for very long, which sucks because that's really the way I used to play games. Like
that is how I prefer.
Into games, and I would learn everything about them. I would become really good at them. I would learn all the secrets. Like,
left to my own, I would probably play like 6 or 7 things all year and just play them, at a steady but not breakneck pace.
Yeah.
Horizon could probably last me like most of a month.
Yeah.
Elden Ring could have lasted me till June. It's like, it's just but you got to keep playing stuff.
Yep. Got to keep going. So there you go. Matt's game of the year for 2022. I don't think it's a big surprise for anyone.
No.
Is Elden Ring.
The one game in here that I didn't, maybe there's some irony after the Switch argument before, but like the one game that I also played a ton this year that I didn't find a place for in any of the categories was Fire Emblem. The
Three Houses or Three Hopes.
Three Hopes.
Yeah.
Like I played that.
I played a lot of that too, actually.
Like 50 hours.
Yeah, we didn't mention it much in here.
But that was really good.
Yeah,
really
it would have fallen into action adventure.
Yeah,
and to me, Bayonetta was way better. But you're right. I'm surprised at how many hours I spent playing that game.
Yeah,
Fire Emblem Heroes. It's good. So that's another one you might want to keep an eye on if you can find it on a discount. And then finally, it's my turn to announce my game of the year for 2022. And I'm guessing people don't know what it is right now. I haven't really tipped my hand at all throughout the rest of these awards, I don't think. But my game of the year...
Is anyone guessing? I don't see any guesses right now in the chat.
Yeah, I don't see any guesses. My game of the year for 2022 is God of War Ragnarok. Not an outlier pick, not an insane pick by any stretch of the imagination.
That's what I expected.
But a lot. Did you expected this to be my game of the year?
Yeah.
It was my game of the year in 2018, the original one. And I will say this first, is that I have not enjoyed this as much as the 2018 game. Mm-hmm. It's too big. I feel like there's a little bit of bloat in this game. And there were portions in the middle of the game where it was slow and I almost stopped playing. And I'm glad I powered through because the last act of this game is incredible. It really finishes strong. And that is kind of the curse of what we do as well, as it sometimes, like with Plague Tale Innocent or Plague Tale Requiem, we didn't finish it. And people are like, it gets really good at the end. So we do sometimes penalize games for not having enough time to finish every game, but that's also a testament to whether the game was good enough to convince us to keep playing it. I have kept playing this game. I haven't played it as much as I played Horizon Forbidden West because it's not as big of a game. And, I will say this too. There's very little reason to go back and replay the campaigns in these God of War games versus like in a more open action RPG like Horizon. But this, as I said about Horizon, is the whole package. It literally has everything. It has one of the best stories of the year. Like, it was my runner-up for best story, and your winner. Visually, it's not quite on par with Horizon Forbidden West, but it's still amazing. I mean, look at this trailer. Look at the stuff that you're seeing. It's still one of the best-looking games of the year. Yeah, it's well-written.
It's interesting that, like, this game nails the one thing Horizon falters on, which is character animation.
Character and combat.
Like, yeah.
Horizon's combat is better than the first game, but it's still not sublime. Yeah. And I would argue that the combat in this is still pretty friggin' sublime.
Yeah. And I would say that Horizon never will do that. It's not
Maybe not. It's not its forte. Yeah, it's not what it's trying to do.
And it's more range. I think the bow action, the ranged action is, just as good as anything in this. Yeah. But like, there's the melee focus in this, and like, you got a couple combos with Aloy now, but it's not anything like this.
Yep. This is more the total package for me. And again, being a gameplay first guy, it gets a little bit of a nod.
It's honestly still shocking to me that I like the axe so much in this, because I don't like axes.
Never in a game do I use an axe. But in this one I do.
This one I do, yeah. It's my preferred weapon.
Yep, I use it too. And also just, the RPG stuff in this, like how much you can upgrade everything in this game. Like, I feel like the RPG stuff is way heavier in this than it was in the last one, and I like having more agency over it. The story, I don't want to spoil stuff, but it matters. It's a great game. And I always talk about craftsmanship on GameFace and all our various shows that we do. The craftsmanship in this game is like second to none. Have you had any bugs or anything like that in this game?
I've
had nothing.
I don't think so.
Clean as a whistle.
I think it crashed once.
Oh, really? I've had nothing.
But I can't remember anything specific.
I had no issues with it. It's just run great. No crashes, no bugs, no any issues. I've had no problems with this game. So
other than a couple of funny guys laying dead in place, but every ragdoll thing.
Every game does that. Yeah, they still haven't quite figured that out yet after all this time. Call of Duty's like that too. Even in multiplayer, like the ragdoll in that game is so weird, like the way enemies like fall when they die. But anyway, God of War Ragnarok, my game of the year. If you had asked me January 1st of this year what I thought my game of the year would be, it probably would have been this. So it's not like it's completely out of character. Again, its predecessor was my game of the year in 2018. And I do not think that this is quite as good, but it's still amazing. And just high quality craftsmanship across the board in pretty much every element of the game. And there you go. Those are our picks for Game of the Year. Before we go, we always have one fun thing. We pick a trailer of the year. And this year, I decided to get Matt in on it. It's kind of a carryover from my days at Game Trailers. We always picked a trailer of the year. It was hard to pick one this year, Matt. Mm-hmm. I really struggled.
Wasn't a lot of standout trailer stuff this year.
Because most of the games coming out were announced like forever ago.
Yeah. And even the stuff like Starfield, I'm excited about, but that trailer wasn't particularly interesting.
No, wasn't great.
It didn't set the word. I was like, and like the more interesting stuff for a lot of that is like, the gameplay demo is interesting.
Yeah.
The trailer is fine.
Yeah. So your pick was?
My pick was Star Wars Jedi Survivor,
which we just talked about,
specifically because the trailer, enhanced my confidence in the game. So.
Which is what it's about.
Yeah.
It's about jacking up your anticipation and your confidence in buying the game ultimately. And I am right there with you. This trailer did both of those for me. Not that I was really all that nervous. Again, the first game
it's not like I wasn't going to buy it,
right?
Obviously, but like this made me feel a lot better.
Yep.
And I trust Respawn, but like it's like you wonder when we're making a sequel to a game that let's be honest, as good as it is, has a lot of flaws and a lot of little cracks in the foundation.
Yep.
You're like, are they gonna focus on the right things? Are they gonna do they know like what needs to be improved as opposed to just like piling new ideas on instead of going back and fixing kind of the basics? And it feels like they did go back and figure out how to make this a more solid, reliable combat game on top of adding a bunch of new stuff. So.
Yep.
And I mean, they got
good trailer.
They got one of the guys that brought us the original God of Wars. So
yep.
We'll see.
Yep. And my trailer of the year, and I really hate to say this because I kind of slagged the trailer when we first saw it. It's the Dead Island 2 re-debut trailer.
I forgot about this.
It has really been a bad year for trailers. There's really nothing that's memorable. I tend to, for this award, gravitate towards trailers that tell a story. Mm-hmm. And this trailer tells a story.
Yeah, it does.
It's not as good as the Dead Island trailers from the past, but still, it's probably the best trailer of 2022. It does tell the story of this guy, and a lot of it's implausible and stupid, but it does tell a story, and it's a narrative that I followed along, and it's a trailer that I remember the most from this year. If you guys can think of any that you really liked, hit us up in the chat, because I really struggled to find a better trailer than this one. But maybe I'm wrong and I overlooked one, but this was the one that ended up sticking out the most in my mind, believe it or not, even though it's not as good as what we expect from this franchise from the past.
Although this franchise is completely different hands now,
it is.
I guess we need to readjust.
Yeah, we do need to adjust our expectations, I guess, a little bit. Hopefully for the better. But we'll
I forgot about this one, but you're right. It's like one of the only memorable trailers from kind of the E3 period of this year.
It's been a bad year for trailers. But again, it's because they're not announcing a lot of new games. They're delaying games and waiting for them to come out. So just part and parcel with the way the industry is right now because of COVID and all the other stuff that's happened with COVID, related to COVID, supply chain, and just work from home and all the other stuff, all the adjustments the studios have made. So you guys have heard us beat the drum about that for a while. So there you go. SIFTD's Game of the Year Awards for 2022. Thanks to everybody who stuck around in the chat for the entire awards. I've seen you guys arguing about our picks. It's awesome to see you guys get spirited about it. We will do a very brief Q&A before we go. I'm surprised this filled out the full 3 hours. Usually this doesn't. For some reason, it went longer this time. So we will do a little bit of Q&A. So you have some burning questions you want to get in before the end of the year, because this is the last you're going to see of Matt and I live for the year. This is the last live broadcast transmission that we have. So if you have any questions that you really want to get answered before we go, get those in the chat now. But before we do that, I have something special that I want to share before we move on. And I just want to, first of all, thank Matt for opening up his home and allowing GameFace to go down in your home. I can't even put into words how much I appreciate it. And I love you like a brother, and I appreciate everything that you do for me and for SIFTD. So I just want to say thank you for this year. And as a special thank you, I got you a Christmas present, and here it is. I got you an SSD expansion for your PlayStation 5.
Oh, wow. Look at that.
So the thing that sucks is I actually ordered this like weeks and weeks ago. Mm-hmm. And they were on back order when I ordered it. And they're like, oh, they're not coming in until like December 28th or whatever. So I had them ship it to my mom's house in Pennsylvania because I'm afraid that I'll be gone and it'll show up at my place and someone will steal it out of my foyer at my apartment complex. So
that is a problem there.
And here's the messed up part. is that my mom texted me yesterday and was like, hey, you got a package here. So I could have sent it here and brought it to you and given it to you today, but that's not what happened. So
okay. I would not have gotten around to installing it before Christmas.
I know. But I wanted to let you know, in case you were asking for this for Christmas from someone else or whatever, that you already have one and one is on the way, and you will finally have a real hard drive in your PlayStation 5.
Wow.
So anyway, thank you, Matt, for everything. I can't tell you how much I appreciate everything you've done. And now one of the most annoying parts of the PlayStation 5, hopefully, will be remedied for you going forward.
Oh, thank you. That is an excellent... I hadn't even thought of asking for that, actually.
Yep.
Because otherwise, what am I going to complain about?
That's funny. But anyway, I love you, Matt, like a brother, and I appreciate everything you do, and I hope that hard drive will serve you well. And
I think it will. I just had to clear out a bunch more shit this week, in fact.
Right on.
To get that Forspoken demo on there.
Yeah. I've been doing lots of deleting in the last month. Just stuff that I left on there, like Dying Light 2. I was right at the end of it, and I just kept leaving it on the hard drive.
I still haven't been able to delete. It's on my Xbox, but I'm like, oh, I should get rid of that. What if I want to play it again?
There's always games like that. I've been deleting a lot of games like that in the last 6 weeks, especially on my PS5 because the hard drive's just small. So, and I do hear you guys. You guys complain all the time about Matt and I complaining about the hard drive sizes on these consoles. Because you're right, most people only have a game or two that they're playing at a time. I think that's one thing that we've kind of not managed to look at from the perspective of other people, because we're always damn it, I always have to delete stuff. But the truth is, for most of you, it's not that big a deal because you only have a couple games at a time. So anyway, also before we get to Q&A, I want to say thank you to Steve D, Steve, who has sponsored us with LS Cream liqueur for the holidays, and you'll see it too in the early part of next year. Steve wanted me to let you guys know that if you want to be able to find it, just go to lscream.com, and they have a store locator, a store finder there, where you can find where to buy it. Now, honestly, you can just go to bevmo.com or your favorite beverage distributor, and you can get it there too. So,
although it depends what state you're in, I think.
Yep. But it is very widely distributed.
It's around.
Very easy to find. It's around. It's great for holiday drinks, for warm drinks, like liqueur drinks, stuff that you can give your uncle and he won't go crazy.
Yeah, the party I was at, we mixed it with Earl Grey milk tea punch.
That's a good mix.
And everyone's like, oh, this is pretty good. And then you put that in, oh, this is really good.
That was really good.
It really changed the drink.
Yeah, so it's like Bailey's, but better.
Yeah.
So support Steve. He's a sifter. We try to support our own as much as we can. The best part was I saw, after we ended the show last week, there were a couple people in chat that were immediately like, I just bought some. So that's the idea here. We want to reward the people who are trying to help out Sifted, who are trying to help out GameFace, who are trying to help our cause by helping them. It's a symbiotic thing, and to me, that's the way the whole world should work. So if you got some money and you like to drink, head on out or order it online and enjoy your holiday season. Okay.
It'd be really good in a milkshake, too.
It would be. It would be really good, actually.
There's not a lot of things it wouldn't be good in.
It's true. It's actually.
I'd put that on pancakes, if I'm honest.
Yeah. It tastes good.
It's thick enough. It's thick.
It is. It would work. Yep. Okay, we're going to get to a couple of your questions. We won't be able to get to too many because we're already over time here, but I do want to answer a couple before we go. JM Rain, thank you, man. Not just for gifting all these Tier 1 subs to our audience, for the whole year, man. You literally come into this show every week and give people subs. That is awesome. Thanks to everybody who does this. Thanks to Lestevid. He dropped a bunch of Tier 1 subs in GameFace earlier this week. It's awesome. Pharaoh, thank you. Everybody who gives us bits, who gives, subs to our audience. You guys are all awesome. We appreciate it very much. Let's see if we can find some questions. The Legacy, what games are you expecting to be announced in 20? I think that's a little too open-ended. Sorry, man. Pharaoh Doll, thank you, man, for these Tier 1 subs. We really appreciate it. Also, I should add, if you guys want to help us over the holidays, you want to buy us a beer or whatever, the best thing you can do is go to sifted.net, SIFTD.net/donate, and there's a credit card thing there where you can punch in any dollar amount and use any credit card and just give us basically a Christmas bonus if you want to thank us for all the content for this year. Furax75, we don't answer many of your questions, so we'll answer this one. What's your take on gameplay versus CG trailers? I feel like CG trailers, while pretty good and good for world building, are ultimately deceiving. Digital Foundry is on a crusade against CG trailers, which makes sense. I agree with you. that they can be misleading, but I still think they're awesome.
Okay,
it gets me sucked into the world and the concept of the game.
Like, I don't mind a CG trailer as the announcement trailer. If you're way out, if it's like kind of a proof of concept thing, if you're just kind of give me a flavor of what the game is about, sort of thing. Like, I think that's fine. Sort of like what Blizzard did for all the time. It's like here's a tone setter for the new Diablo, new StarCraft, new World of Warcraft expansion, whatever. Yeah, that's cool. But beyond that first taste, I like it to be the game. Yeah, I think there's a place for CG trailers, but it's more as like an appetizer. You should not be still throwing CG at me like 3 months before the game is released. Yeah, and I would even actually
usually they don't.
No,
sometimes the launch trailer, they'll have two trailers. They'll have a CG launch trailer and a gameplay
trailer and a gameplay trailer. Yeah, and I would even go that far with like in-engine cutscene driven. I think that Suicide Squad trailer is useless 6 months out from launch, whereas that Star Wars trailer showed you the game.
It did.
Like, it was a mix of things.
Yep,
so
it's true.
No, I see the point there.
I do too, but I still like CG trailers. Yeah, because I like to see making the world and the concept look as good as possible. What can they do? Yeah. Like, I'm excited for all Blizzard's stuff.
Yeah. I see the point on that, but at the same time, those CG trailers for Star Wars: The Old Republic is some of the best Star Wars of all time, and I would not trade those for anything. So even though they clearly do not reflect what the MMO plays like, they're all awesome. So there's a place if you're talking about something. If you there's a correct way to use it, like any tool.
Yep. Red Fox is asking, why aren't you excited for Spider-Man 2?
I am, but also Spider-Man 2 is a very, very, very known quantity.
Yeah.
I don't have any questions about Spider-Man 2. I don't have any curiosity about it. Frankly, I know that it's going to be great. It's going to be another Insomniac home run.
We just shattered our all-time record.
And in terms of...
for the hype train or something.
Yeah, the last record, I think, because I don't think we've been to level 4 in a while.
Huh. Interesting.
But so like my anticipated games are games I'm curious about, and I'm wondering what it's going to be like, or what it's going to feel like, or how is this going to be? Am I going to like it? Am I not going to like it? Like all that. Like that's what Fallen, Jedi Survivor and Starfield are. Is like they're big question marks for me. I mean, I'm excited about them. They're definitely in my wheelhouse, but I don't know how they're going to turn out. I have no questions about how Spider-Man 2 is going to turn out.
Like, it's gonna be great.
Spider-Man 2 is probably... I mean, odds are Spider-Man 2 is my game of the year next year.
Probably.
But, like, it's...
I don't know. Starfield might be a tough customer to...
Starfield might. Like, in a wonderful timeline, Starfield will be my favorite game of next year.
Where one of Bethesda's games isn't completely broken at launch.
Absolutely. Exactly. But, like, that's exactly my point. Like, Starfield is, like... Starfield has potential to be one of my favorite games ever. If it's solid and done right and full, if it aligns more or less with what I'm hoping for in a space exploration Skyrim RPG style thing. Like I know Bethesda has it in them to make that game. This game has been vaguely in my head since I was a child, kind of. It's one of those games. But if it isn't, Spider-Man 2 is gonna be awesome, and I'm kind of fine with that. Yeah. It's like. But that's why Starfield and Spider-Man 2 isn't in those most anticipated listings, is because it's a given. It's going to be awesome. Yep. It's Insomniac. They know exactly what they're doing. I have no worries about it.
Norix Nessie, thank you for Twitch Prime. Also, I want to say thanks to everybody else who subscribed with Twitch Prime during the show. Because this isn't GameFace, it wasn't a place for me to kind of thank you guys, but I did see it, and thank you very much. Also, please, everybody, subscribe with Twitch Prime. We really need the help. You can give us a free $2.50 a month. If you're an Amazon Prime member, it costs you nothing. It's just a part of Amazon Prime. Again, if you're watching this on YouTube, there's instructions down below. If you're a patron or you're a sifter on sifted.net, please remember to do that. We really, really need the help with Twitch Prime if you can. Answer maybe one or two more. ETH Demon, what's your non-AAA most anticipated game? For me, it's the Mega Man Battle Network Collection. Oh, gosh. I can't even begin to figure out that one. Non-AAA. I can't even think of a non-AAA game other than indie games for next year.
Yeah, I guess Hades 2, is that AAA? Kind of?
That's probably a good guess, though.
It's high profile.
What about Silk Song, dude? I didn't even realize, honestly, until I was putting together like our fantasy league, that game didn't come out still.
It didn't.
What the hell? So there's one.
When we picked it, I told you it doesn't have it doesn't even have a window yet. Like, they haven't even mentioned years in relation to that game yet.
Yeah. Furax75, thank you for Twitch Prime as well.
That's a good question. I mean, Earthblade.
Mega Drive guy, thank you.
Earthblade is
Oh,
up
yeah.
there.
That's one.
Like, I mostly just on the strength of Celeste.
The next game from the Celeste guys, yeah, and girls. I think that's it. I think we can't answer anymore. We're already way over time. So there you go. That's the year in Sifted, at least here on Twitch. There will be content flowing through Sifted.net and our Patreon throughout the entire break. Mostly Pactor Factor. Look, tomorrow we're going to put a call in for Ask Shane Anything questions, and we'll do an episode or two of that while I'm gone that'll be scheduled for you guys to watch. But really, I hope that you guys, like me and like Matt, you take a time to step away from the internet for a while and decompress, unplug, connect with people, touch grass, as the kids say. Seriously, like, ground yourself again. Go talk with your family and your friends. COVID isn't such a big deal this holiday season like it has been the last couple. You might actually be able to spend time inside with somebody, not worry about getting COVID, which is nice. And so I hope a lot of you guys will be able to reconnect with people in the real world over the holiday season.
Oh, it's a real bad flu season.
Yeah, it could be.
It's rough.
Yeah. And most importantly, like, I hope you guys have a great holiday season. Whether you celebrate Christmas or Kwanzaa or any other, I don't care. I don't. You make up your own thing to celebrate. I don't care. I just hope that you have a really great holiday season, and I hope you have a very safe and happy New Year's as well. We do not have a definitive date for when we're coming back, but usually it's the first couple days of January. A lot of that depends on when I can get a reasonably priced flight back to California. Last year, remember, I was trapped on the East Coast for like 2 weeks, so I couldn't get a flight back that wasn't like $1,000 or whatever. So hopefully that doesn't happen this time, although flights are pretty darn expensive just getting out there.
It seems like
it might be. I might just have to bite the bullet and just, I mean, literally like $900 one way.
That's assuming you're not snowed in or something.
Yeah, so we'll see. But anyway, I love you guys. I appreciate every single one of you. It's not lost on me that you guys donate money so Matt and I can talk about video games. I still, like, this has been the worst year we've ever had financially from Sifted, which sucks. By a mile, it's been the worst ever. But I still wake up so appreciative that I'm able to do what I do. Because, one, it's not really about the money. It's just, it really is about doing what you love. And you guys allow us to do that. So thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for everything. Like, all the bits you've given us, all the times you've taken, the extra 2 minutes to subscribe with Twitch Prime, all that stuff. It all means something to me. It all matters. And I just want to say thank you. You guys are amazing. And I can't say it enough. So, any final words before we go for the year, Matt?
No, I think touch grass is a good sign off.
Yeah, it is. So we love you guys. We'll see you bright and early in 2023. Take care.